Crowd in front of Bennington. The puck to McDavid. They center. Oh, Perry was there in front. Couldn't get a piece of it. Back to Ekholm. Down to McDavid. Through to Draisaitl. They score. It's 2-2. Oilers are in. McDavid dangles down low. Far wing. They score. Connor McDavid magic strikes again. He gets it over to Connor Brown. And the Edmonton Oilers are going to win in overtime by a score of 3-2.
That's what it sounded like last night right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. They do get a point. They do not end up getting the extra one, though, in overtime. And that was in part, Alex, because they missed out on, 100 different opportunities. Robert Thomas misses a wide-open net. Pavel Buchnevich missed a couple of opportunities himself. Alexander Texier right at the net, which would have been, honestly, an unbelievable play with that backhand attempt right at the net. Ends up kind of hitting off the foot, the post, and then going out. So they lose. They lose in overtime 2-1, or 3-2. That's the kind of game that you've got to come away with the 2 points in, given where the Blues are at right now. Alex, what did you make of the loss last night at Enterprise Center?
Well, I kind of had a positive and a negative mindset because the positive side of me was looking at that second period and thinking it's like, damn, okay, this looks like a different team. And Bennington was elite in that game. Defensively, you did a really good job against them at 5-on-5. But all of that positivity gets taken away when you don't have the ability to finish. Like, I look at the Edmonton Oilers in the second and third period, they didn't generate as much offense as they did in that first period. But you know what they did? When they had their opportunities, they converted and they finished. And it was elite. I mean, we're talking about Leon freaking Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. You don't just replicate those. You have to go to some type of science lab and create that. But they finished. And the second period, T-Bone and I were sitting next to each other. It felt like the Blues were just humming in the offensive zone. A couple of different cycles. It would be Thomas's line. It would be Texier's line. It would be the Brayden Schenn line. But every single opportunity would be a grade A scoring chance. It would be missed net, duffed shot, missed net. And then the third period, T-Bone, to his credit, said it to me. Thomas missed that wide open net and said that is going to come back to bite them. And he was right. The Texier one was going to come back to bite them. I go back to the ever famous quote of Doug Armstrong: you have to know when to kill off the opponent, jam the knife into their brain. That missed empty net, that missed scoring chance by Texier, that was it. That was the moment you put an Edmonton Oilers team down and say, you're not coming back into this one. And the Blues aren't able to do that yet. Whether you think it's a learning process or these are the guys that have been here for 5, 6, 7 years and still don't have that ability, that Robert Thomas missed net, that Alex Texier missed scoring chance, that was the moment in that game. This team lacks the ability to finish in those high-leverage situations.
And last night, for me, was the latest reminder of why you got to build around stars, right? Like, the Oilers are down 2-1 in that game. Thomas misses that opportunity to make it 3-1. And the Oilers say, hey, McDavid, hey, Draisaitl, go out there and tie the game for us. They go out there. They dominate the whole night when they're on the ice. They get that 6-on-5 opportunity. Knew it was coming, right? McDavid's clearly going to the left side of the ice. He wants to go cross ice to Draisaitl for a one-timer. What do? They draw it up perfectly. That exact same thing happens. Boom, Draisaitl scores the goal. They tie it. They go to overtime. Hey, McDavid, stay on the ice for the 3-on-3 overtime period. McDavid makes a hell of a play, and it leads to the goal that wins the hockey game. That right there is what decides the game, right? Those guys they can just turn to and say, McDavid and Draisaitl, we're down by a goal. We need you to do something. And the superstars can take over a hockey game. Blues don't have anybody they can turn to in a moment like that and say, hey, go out there and tie this game up for us. They just don't have that. And I also think last night's game was a reminder, and really it's been this stretch for the St. Louis Blues, that they belong in the have-nots category. They've played the haves. The Avalanche dominated them. Dallas dominated them. And the Blues, they don't belong in that tier. You know, they belong in that final tier when you look at it and say, hey, maybe it could have been a team for that last wild card spot. But because you happen to hit this stretch of some of these best teams in the Western Conference, they just smacked you right back down to where you're now looking way up at the Calgary Flames.
To your point on that, T-Bone, the Blues in the past month now have played played 6 games against teams that are currently in the top 3 in their division. Minnesota, Vegas twice, Dallas, Colorado, and then last night against Edmonton. 6 total games against those teams currently in the top 3 in their respective divisions. So that's a possible 12 points. They have earned 3. Their one win was in a shootout against Vegas, a game that they should have won in regulation, much like last night. Should have found a way to win that one in regulation, but you can't come away with those points in regulation, and you end up the shootout win against Vegas last night, the loss in overtime. They are 1-4-1 in those games, so 3 possible points out of the 12. They have been outscored 24-13. It's not good enough. We can talk about special teams. We can talk about shooting. We can talk about defense. We can talk about goaltending. You can go in any possible direction. The truth is, if I asked you a simple question right now, what are the Blues great at? None of us could have an answer to that. Because they're not great at anything. There are things that at times they do pretty well. At times, they're a pretty decent defensive team. At times, they've got the capability of being an elite goaltending team, but they have not been an elite goaltending team this season. At times, they are a pretty good offense or a pretty good penalty kill. But none of this has sustained over the course of a full season. If I asked you that same question about Edmonton or Colorado or Dallas or Vegas or Minnesota, we've all got an answer on what they do at an elite level. You go back through on any of the great Blues teams that you can remember. You knew, even if they didn't have like an elite player anywhere, they did something at an elite level. Goal suppression, goal score, whatever it was. This current team, one of the things that remains frustrating about it is that I don't know what that elite thing is going to be. I can't pinpoint right now. I don't think it's going to be defense. I'm not sure there's a way for this team to become an elite defensive unit. I think they're pretty good right now. I don't think there's a way to get there at an elite level. Goaltending, I want to believe they can be an elite goaltending unit. I'm just not sure that's ever going to happen during a regular season. I believe in Binnington in the postseason, but in the regular season, that's just really never been who he is. So it probably has to come from the forward group in some way, shape, or form. And right now, as I look at this forward group, I'm not seeing it, Alex. Well, because last night I saw an elite unit, and it was on the other side.
If you're asking me what they need to be good at, go off of the history of Jim Montgomery. What have teams that have been elite under Jim Montgomery been great at? Defense and goal suppression. Dallas, his first year there, fourth fewest goals allowed per game in the National Hockey League. Boston, his 2 years there, it was the second fewest and the third fewest in the National Hockey League. Jim Montgomery's teams are built much like Craig Berube's teams were built. 5-on-5, you need to be excellent, and goal suppression. 3 goals is the recipe for success when you're winning with Jim Montgomery.
How do you get there, though? That's where I have a tough time with it. Like, with this core group of players, how do you get to what you're talking about?
Buy-in from the entire team to what Jim Montgomery's preaching. You can't have any passengers in a game like last night.
I don't think you're capable. Like, I think sometimes we talk about this buy-in, we talk about the effort, we talk about all of these different things that are intangibles, and sometimes it's about, do you have the dudes? Like, Ryan O'Reilly is an elite defensive player because of his skill. Like, that guy is just an amazing defensive player. It's not always about try hard. I think Oscar Sundqvist tries really hard. I think when you look at the Cardinals, they've had some dudes that try really. Matt Carpenter last year tried really hard to be a good hitter. He's just not capable of it at this point in his major league career. I think Brandon Crawford really wanted to be a good shortstop for the Cardinals. I don't think he was capable of it at this point in his career. And I think that's what the Blues are running into is there is a ceiling to certain guys. We talked about this with Ollie Marmol over the last couple of years, T-Bone. You can't ask for certain guys to do more than what they're producing, and I think that's what the Blues are running into right now is that glass ceiling on certain players of we just don't have the dudes to be that team.
You don't have the depth right now. I think you've got the top guys to be the shutdown players for you. Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich did it at 5-on-5 last night against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl.
For 2 periods.
You don't have the depth. Wow, they didn't score in the first period. They got their scoring chances, but they didn't score.
Okay. If you play that same first period a number of times, it ain't going to go that same way.
Well, but there's the goaltending that we're talking about.
Definitely.
You had elite goaltending by Binnington last night, and I mean, you looked at what the goalies had for Boston there. If you're asking me how do they get there, you're going to have to hope you find the right players. And that's what I don't know right now. But like when I look at what Jim Montgomery had in Boston, they don't have a David Pastrnak. That is very plain and simple. This is a 61 goal scorer. But
they also don't have a Brad Marchand.
It's supposed to be Pavel Buchnevich, wasn't it? Weren't we talking last year of Pavel Buchnevich being one of the most underrated defensive two-way forwards in the National Hockey League?
That's why I wanted to trade him.
Patrice Bergeron, we were talking about Robert Thomas being in the Selke Trophy conversation last year, weren't we?
Yeah, he hasn't been that this year.
So, like, I can look at it and say, like, oh, the players, maybe you just don't have the dudes. Well, last year we were talking about them having the dudes, and this year, what, they all of a sudden aren't those guys anymore? I think it's going to come down to more, at least for me, it's going to come down to a commitment from the players to playing the way that Jim Montgomery sees successful. And when you can do that, then I think you can play. You still don't have those superstars. You still don't have a 50, 60 goal scorer on your team. I am fine with admitting that because it is very evident after last night.
But you don't think you're going to get burned with that comment?
No, probably not. It probably won't.
Okay.
Maybe. Who knows? But I think they have other pieces. I think defensively, they've got the right guys there. Goaltending-wise, they haven't been very consistent at all this season. To me, it's more about the players than it's worrying about, like, well, you just don't have certain guys. You don't have the one superstar on your team.
Which is a huge deal.
Absolutely.
It's the hardest thing to... Again, I go back to the football analogy. It's like having a really well-rounded roster, right? You've got your pass rushers. You've put together the offensive line. Oh, I'm talking about the Browns. You forgot the quarterback. And so the Browns tried to get the quarterback. They did everything they could. That guy ended up being a horrible human being and a really bad football player. And boom, now you're stuck. And it all ends up going to hell. And now your best player is asking for a trade. Like, I'm not saying that's what the Blues are. The Blues are not the Browns. They're not that much of a disaster of an organization. But what they are is a team that's lacking the most difficult thing to find in the sport, which is a superstar. And when you have your opportunity to go get that guy, you got to move heaven and earth to be able to get him. Matthew Tkachuk was that guy. He was available, and the Blues weren't able to get the job done. It happens, right? Like, maybe Tkachuk just really wanted to go to Florida, whatever. We don't have to rehash that again.
Can't blame him looking outside.
No doubt, for sure. Like, I get it. It's worked out pretty well for Matthew Tkachuk, I would say. But when you have that opportunity, you have got to capitalize. And the problem is, those opportunities are few and far between, man. Where do you find your superstars? Well, you either sign them in free agency, and you just cross your fingers and hope like hell you were right, or more often than not, you draft him in the top five.
And that's the part that I want to address real quick because we're seeing a ton of texts coming in saying, tank for a top 5 pick. Go get a top 5 pick, and then you don't have to worry about it.
This isn't the draft for that, though, right?
This is not the draft for it. Like somebody brought up, look at where McDavid and Draisaitl were picked. Yeah, but let's also not forget the Oilers drafted Taylor Hall, who was a good player but wasn't the player for them. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who is now a second-line center for them. They had to be bad to get Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And then also, let's not forget Nail Yakupov, who they drafted first overall.
Can I add another one? The Blackhawks did this. Not the first time around. The first time around it worked. They tanked, they got really good players, and they ended up going on a dynasty run. But the next time around, dude, they had the generational talent that they selected. His name was Connor Bedard. All of us were talking about suck hard for Bedard, and now he is on the Blackhawks. This season, he has 15 goals, 45 points, in 52 games.
Yeah.
He's fine. He's a fine, like, second, third-line center right now at this point in his career, and he might end up being great. But he's tiny, and it doesn't seem like his game is translating to the next level the way that people expected that it would. So even when you do everything quote-unquote right and get that top 5 pick, or in their scenario, the number 1 selection, and that player is available who has been compared to basically exclusively Sidney Crosby, it still doesn't work out half the time.
Well, and sometimes you can draft Leon Draisaitl, and he's not Leon Draisaitl until you get the other piece.
Sure.
Like, look at what Draisaitl did his first couple of years. His first year, he was sent to the minor leagues and then back to junior hockey. His second year, the first year that Connor McDavid was drafted, who only played 45 games, he's had 19 goals in 72. And then the next full season, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl went off. Look at Mikko Rantanen right now. Rantanen, we all believe, is one of the best players in the league. You know how many goals he's got right now in 6 games for the Carolina Hurricanes?
Isn't that 1?
1. Yep. Like, sometimes you can draft a guy 3rd overall and say, holy bleep, we got him. But guess what? You might not get the actual dude for 3 more drafts where you got to suck that hard to be there. So it doesn't.
Whoa.
Hey, man, when I said it, it's okay. We go back to the well.
If you got to have to suck hard to get those players, man.
I do want to address one other text. And 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You guys can check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. From the 314. Guys, they didn't have a super bleeping star when they won the Cup the last time either. No, they didn't. And I think that is what is leading to a lot of the decisions that have been made over the last 5 years, is the Blues were the outlier. And it's hard to talk about outliers and then learn the lessons of, like, oh, we were the outlier. We can't continue to build that way and expect the same results. The Detroit Pistons won the NBA Finals 20 years ago against the LA Lakers. Which of those builds was more likely to win over time? Well, of course it was the Lakers, right? It's a tale as old as time. You get 3 superstars, you got a pretty decent chance of winning the NBA Finals. But the Pistons won that year. And credit to them, it's one of my favorite teams to watch. The way that they assembled that team, the ass kickers that they were super fun. But you just couldn't expect to win that same way, reconstruct a different roster the same way, and win over the next 20 seasons. The Blues, the lesson to me that could be learned from that team in 2019 was they were elite at something, guys. They were unbelievable defensively. They were huge. They took away all of your time and space. And when they got their opportunities, they capitalized the other way. But they were elite defensively and had an unbelievable goalie in net. That was the lesson from the 2019 Blues, is that they were elite at something, and that's what you should strive to be. It doesn't have to be defense. It doesn't have to be goaltending, but you damn well better be elite at something. And the problem right now is that the Blues are not elite at anything. And I don't necessarily, today at least, see a path for them to get there. I hope that I'm wrong on that. Maybe they become an elite goal-scoring team, and Snuggerud and Dvorsky become that, and Kyrou takes another step, and Thomas is just a weird, 3-week stretch, and Booch is going to get back to what he was. Maybe he's dealing with some undisclosed injury. All of that is possible. But as of today, that's my concern about the 2025 St. Louis Blues. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We will certainly get to more of your thoughts throughout the day today. We will be talking about our favorite Super Bowl prop bets. Have you guys been diving into these markets yet? Because I'm shoulder deep in the water of the Super Bowl prop bets at this point.
I already have a 15-leg parlay.
Good.
Yeah.
I have way too many bets out there. I'm so excited for this year's Super Bowl. So we'll get into some of those coming up in about 15 minutes or so. We'll get to your questions at 11:45. But next, Alex, we got a report. Kinda. It's more speculation than a report. But
what?
Sounds like there might be one final spot for the Cardinals to be able to move Nolan Arenado. We'll tell you who that is next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In about 10 minutes, we'll get to our Super Bowl prop bets. So we are most in love with. Alex has a 27-leg parlay. That's
big money.
5,000 to 1. So he's super excited about that.
$100 on it, too.
Good for you, man.
See what happens.
I've got a fantasy team that has a good amount of money on the line going into Sunday, so please root for Patrick Mahomes and Xavier Worthy. That would be very helpful for me.
Xavier Worthy goes off. I win the pool here at 101 ESPN, Hubbard. So root for Xavier
That's
Worthy.
What I'm talking about,
no,
brother.
no Patrick Mahomes. I need rushing touchdowns from him.
Fair enough.
Part of my parlay.
All right, so I did want to get into the report yesterday from JP Morosi. And I know the Fast Lane talked about this on their show as well. It's a little bit of a loose report, no doubt about it, but JP Morosi says on Twitter, the Red Sox and Cardinals have had recent communication about Nolan Arenado. If the trade talks move forward, they could have implications for Alex Bregman's market. Of note, JP Morosi says, Cardinals executive Chaim Bloom has close knowledge of Boston's prospects, end quote. So we knew that the Red Sox had some level of interest in Arenado. We also know that they have had some level of negotiations with Alex Bregman. I do find it interesting that Morosi says that the communication about Arenado could have an impact on Bregman's market, which seems to suggest to me the Red Sox might be pivoting from Bregman to Arenado as opposed to them being eliminated from the Bregman conversations and then taking their discussions over to Arenado. This might be a spot where the Red Sox say, you know what? We're not going to go where Bregman's going to want us to go, so let's go ahead and get this done now before we get to spring training, and let's go talk to Nolan Arenado as our pivot here. Alex, when you think about the Cardinals' priorities in this spot, what are they trying to accomplish? If the Red Sox are legitimately interested in Nolan Arenado, what are you trying to accomplish in such a trade?
Well, I'm going to go back to what Jaime Garcia told you guys at the winter warm-ups. Priority number 1, 2, and 3 is getting rid of Nolan Arenado, trading away Nolan Arenado. And if that's the case, and if this report is true, that Boston has called the Cardinals back and said, hey, look, we think we're not going to get Bregman. We need to revisit this. Great. If I'm Jaime Garcia, what do we need to do to get this done? And I know you kind of play your hand in that one, but to me, this is your last shot to trade Nolan Arenado. If you can't pull it off with this team, you're not trading Nolan Arenado this season. He will be in Jupiter to start the year, and in my opinion, if he starts the year with the Cardinals, he's going to finish his contract with the Cardinals, because I don't think anybody's going to want to take him on as he gets older and as his play declines over these next few months. So this is it. This is your shot. If you've got a team calling and saying, look, our plan B is falling through, we need to go back to what our plan A was. If I'm the Cardinals, eat more money. It sucks. I know that's not what you planned in this refresh, but you know what's going to suck worse? You having Nolan Arenado at third base and squeezing one of these young players that you've talked about. So to me, if Boston's calling, you're going to have to start eating more money, but you need to do what you said. Priority 1, 2, and 3, trade away Nolan Arenado.
What if I told you, and it's just hypothetical, right? All of this is hypothetical scenarios. If the Red Sox said, we're interested in Arenado, we want to get a deal done. And there's a sliding scale here, right? Of, hey, if they take on, I feel like the starting point, as we talked about with Kylie McDaniel 4 months ago now, the Cardinals eat $15 million. They get basically nothing in return. They wash their hands of the situation, and boom, everybody goes their separate ways. That's like the starting point, right? You're saying eat more of the money. What that would likely do is the Cardinals then suddenly start to get more and more and more in return, depending on how much money they're willing to eat. Now, I did find it interesting when we talked to Jaime Garcia at Cardinals Winter Warm-Up. He effectively said, hey, if we had to go into the season with Arenado's contracts on the books, we'd be fine. We're not in a spot money-wise where we have to eliminate that from the books, but it'd be better. It'd give us a little more wiggle room if we could. The reason why I bring that up is because that should inform the negotiations here. And if you can get a better prospect in return by eating more of that money, now it gives you less flexibility in future seasons because it's 3 years left on that contract. But is that something you guys are looking to do? Or is this truly just a wash your hands of the Arenado contract as much as you possibly can and move on? You looking for the prospect? You're hoping to get more? Or are you just forget it, just get out of here?
Priority 1 is getting rid of Nolan Arenado. But if I'm eating more money, I will call up other teams that I've had conversations with and say, hey, look, we've changed our mindset a little bit. We're going to eat a little bit more.
I think this is just a Boston negotiation.
You don't think anybody else is going to jump in here?
I don't think so either.
Well, then, yeah. You call Boston, and, I mean, Chaim Bloom knows Boston's prospect pool. You call them and say, I'm willing to eat more money, but you're going to have to give me something in return. But if they say no, all right,
maybe
cool.
I'm not asking this correctly. What is your priority in these negotiations? Like, are you trying to get rid of more money? or are you trying to get more prospects? Because that's the scale, right?
I think their answer. I think the Cardinals' answer is the money. I don't think the Cardinals care what the prospect return is. I think they want as much of this money off the books for future seasons, not just this year, but for future seasons. Like, if they can get to where it is a 3-year, $60 million deal, which is what you're talking about, the eating of $15 million, that's what the Cardinals would be happy to do. I don't think they're interested in, hey, what would it take? Chaim Bloom, you mentioned him knowing the Red Sox system. I'm sure Chaim Bloom will tell Mo, hey, here's a handful of prospects to target. And I'm sure Mo will say, hey, what does it take for us to get prospect A? And they say, well, you've got to eat $30 million of this contract. I think the Cardinals will say, okay, what can we get if we just eat $15 million? Like, I think they are solely focused on cutting money. I do not think the Cardinals care what this prospect return is going to be.
I agree with that. The sole purpose is getting rid of Nolan Arenado, and if you can save money, then that's the whole point of all of this. But that's why I feel like you've hit this stall, because you want to save as much money as possible and move on from Nolan Arenado, and teams aren't willing to do that.
I just don't care about the prospects currency right now. Like, I think they would play it right if their goal is to get rid of as much money as possible. And the reason why I believe that is because they've got the young players that they need, man. In fact, they have too much of a surplus. There are spots that are at a logjam right now because of the amount of young players that they have. Now, you could always use more pitching, and so if Chaim Bloom goes to Mo and says, hey, they've got like 4 pitching prospects that I really think have a legit future in Major League Baseball. Here's who they are. I think you should target one of them. Cool. I've got no problem with that. But position player-wise, like, where are you putting these guys, man? Eventually, you've got to start giving opportunity to these young players. That's what this trade is all about. Seeing how they perform, and then moving on from the players that don't fit into your future plans, and acquiring guys from the outside that can fit those spots to give you the certainty at those respective positions. So I'm not interested, really, honestly, in getting much in return prospect-wise for Nolan Arenado. It truly is, to me, all about getting as much money off of the books as you possibly can to allow for that future flexibility. So next year, if this team ends up getting positive returns on Gorman or Walker, Herrera, whomever, these young players, maybe J.J. Weatherholt just screams through the minor league system, and next year you've got him as your starting second baseman, whatever it is. I want to be ready to push. I want to go make that Kyle Tucker move next year. So that way we are in position as an organization to be able to take on more money than we otherwise would have anticipated. So that would be my priority as well. I know it seems like that's the Cardinals' priority. I agree with you, T-Bone. It would also be mine. I think they're playing that the right way.
And now you've actually hit what you're saying, is you finally have hit the youth movement, right?
Exactly.
Now you have finally have created playing opportunities for guys.
Actions and your words are finally matching up.
Yeah, unlike for most of the offseason where they haven't added up, and now you finally execute that plan. So, yeah, I think it's all about just cutting money. And I think that was telling in that Astros deal that got nixed, right? You could have eaten more money in that Astros deal and gotten something more meaningful in return in a potential deal, and they chose $15 million. And the reason I mentioned why you could have eaten more money in the Astros deal, the Astros are trying to avoid that luxury tax threshold. Sure. And the more money you eat on Arenado, the more it helps them to build this season as well and doesn't constrain them as much. The $60 million at his current deal, if you only ate that $15 million, would have put the Astros right there near that line. So I think that was a sign of the Cardinals just saying, hey, please, just here, we'll eat 15, you can have them. Just take them.
Yeah, we still don't know what the return was on that deal, but it feels like that was indeed the case.
Here's a throw-in prospect.
Hey, tune in next week as TMA broadcasts live from Cardinal spring training all week long. They will be live at Roger Dean Stadium with all the latest news and notes from Jupiter, Florida. Do not miss the morning after live from Cardinal spring training all week next week on 101 ESPN. That is brought to you by CarStar, your auto body repair experts. Coming up next, we're going to get into some of our favorite Super Bowl prop bets this year. I have a long list of the ones that I'm interested in. I know Alex has had probably 17 different parlays that he's put on the Circus Sports app in the state of Illinois, and T-Bone's going to listen to what we have to say. We'll do that next here on 101 ESPN. Alex, we are just a few days away from the big game, and for this year, I like the Chiefs to win straight up. You're not surprised by that,
Nope.
but I'm going to be going ahead and taking them over on the Circa Sportsbook in the state of Illinois. But it goes beyond that. They've got all the prop bets that you're looking for. I like Xavier Worthy to have the most receiving yards in the big game this year. That's at about 4.5 to 1. You can also go by your margins of victory. So if you think the Chiefs are going to win the big game by 8 to 14 points, which I think is very much in play, that's plus 640. They've got all your MVP bets, all of that stuff. It's available for you right now. Get your bets in early for the big game over on the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois.
And put them together in a big parlay, because you know I love doing those over on Circa Sports. They are keeping as little money as possible on those large market bets. Plus, they're not limiting you based off of your winnings. They're transparent about it. They tell you to go check it out. They know you'll come back to Circa Sports Illinois. Download the app today and get ready for the big game this weekend. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues fell the Oilers last night 3-2 in overtime. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Florida Panthers. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, it is time for some Super Bowl prop bets. Ladies and gentlemen, the big game is just a few days away. And that means that we've got to get our bets in.
Props.
Oh, stop. That was brutal.
Like Zips. I don't think Zimborski?
Yeah.
I don't think he'll ever come on with us again after we did the Zips
I don't think
song
so.
with him.
That's okay.
I don't blame him.
So the Chiefs are a 1.5 point favorite right now. That's gone up and down a little bit throughout the week. It's gone down to 1 in some places. Some people have suggested that the Eagles might even be favored by the start of the game on Sunday. But as of today, most markets still have it at roughly a 1.5 point line in favor of the Chiefs. Let's start like top line, right? How do you guys see this game going? Because that should inform, I would imagine, a lot of the prop bets that you're probably going to be making. So are you guys leaning in one direction or the other? Do you think it's going to be a blowout, close game? What is informing some of what you're expecting this game to look like?
I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm going all of my prop bets off of the over. I think the over is going to be an easy cover in this one. I think you're probably looking at a 3-point game. So the plus minus is the hard part for me, but over is simple.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the over as well. It's why I'm going a little higher on some of my prop bets, because I'm thinking like 30-20, 30-23. That'll get you over because I think over's at 48.5, I think. So that's what I'm leaning towards my props. Now, I know I'm probably going to be way off on everything then, and everything's going to cash under.
Yeah, no, it's going to be like 2 points in the first half.
So I think the Chiefs are going to win in a close game. That's my current belief. I do think that you guys are kind of right on the money of where this thing ends. 27-23. Kind of, it feels like around that 50-point threshold, maybe a little bit over. So I would lean towards the over in this game as well. So I am kind of leaning over in a decent number of my props. Alex, do you have a favorite prop that you have seen thus far? Because whether it's like, you know, betting some of the higher lower stuff, more or less, or going over to the specific props on any given sports book, like, what is your favorite thing that you're kind of looking at this
I think
far?
my favorite thing, because I told you guys I think it's an easy over, my favorite one in terms of the odds, it's plus 212 on the Circa app, is Patrick Mahomes passing 3+ touchdowns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I looked at that one, too. I do like it.
The odds on it were so good. It's one of the 15 bets on my parlay that I've put together.
That's amazing.
But Patrick Mahomes throwing 3+ touchdowns, I don't think this is going to be a rushing game for Kansas City. I think they're going to do this through the air. The one that ties into that for me, BK, is over 6.5 receptions for Travis Kelce, because I think he's going to be a mainstay in the middle of that field because of Patrick Mahomes, and it wouldn't surprise me if he gets 2 touchdowns in the game.
Yeah, I love the Kelce stuff for the overs. I think last week is influencing some of that, where people saw him have another bad game. The place that you attack the Eagles defense is the middle of the field. Yep. They play that classic cover 2 style with Vic Fangio, and he's going to have his safeties covering deep. In the middle of the field, they do not have Nakobe Dean for this game. He got hurt earlier in the postseason, so they've got a backup middle linebacker in the game. They've got a really good slot corner in Cooper DeJean, but he's going to be occupied by some of the Chiefs receivers in line. It's a lot of linebackers that are going to be on linebackers and safeties that are going to be on Travis Kelce, and that's the weakness of this Eagles defense. If there is one, they're basically good everywhere else. So I really like the overs for Travis Kelce in this game as well, along with the rest of the world.
Yeah. I've got 2 that I really like, and the first is a player one, and that is Chris Jones, a sack, plus 134.
I have that one too.
I know it's the Super Bowl, man. I know Chris Jones is going to record a sack because it's a big game. Yep. So the fact that you're getting plus money on Chris Jones to record a sack, I love that. And then, though I think this game will be over, I like the first quarter tie, plus 320. I think it's going to be a little push and pull in that first quarter, especially the Eagles really going to want to establish the running game, right? And if they do, it's the way that they score their touchdown. And then I can see Mahomes going down the field and scoring. Or I see where the Eagles are getting pressure on Mahomes early. They're able to slow down the Kansas City Chiefs. Meanwhile, the Chiefs also slow down the run, right? And then the Eagles have to try and figure it out. I love a first quarter tie at plus 320.
I love that sack one. I have Chris Jones in a sack, and I have the Kansas City Chiefs team sacks at 1.5. You know how many times Jalen Hurts has been sacked in this postseason? 11 times. Yeah. I mean, the dude's been sacked 20 times in 8 playoff games. Like, I know he's mobile. I know he can get out of the pocket. I do think you're going to see multiple sacks on Jalen Hurts.
All right, so one of my favorites going into this game is the Xavier Worthy stuff in general. I think he's going to have a really good game here. I would take his over on all of the rushing props. I think they're going to get him multiple rushing opportunities because these Eagles defensive ends scream upfield, and the way that the Chiefs like to attack those kinds of defenses, get Xavier Worthy going right underneath them. We don't have to worry about those edge rushers. It'll slow them down a little bit coming up the arc. The Chiefs do have some question marks at offensive tackle going into this game, as they have all postseason. So I think Xavier Worthy, the rushing yardage stuff, is really interesting for him. I also like for the Eagles, Dallas Goedert as the first touchdown scorer in this game. Ooh. Everybody's going to be throwing money on one of Saquon Barkley or Jalen Hurts to score the first touchdown, especially if you're going on the Eagles side of things. The Chiefs are not very good against tight ends, and especially in the red zone, tight ends have given them some troubles. So Dallas Goedert at 15.5 to 1 to score the first touchdown in this game. I really like that one.
One of the Eagles ones that I love is 40+ rushing yards for Jalen Hurts. I think you pop off on just one breakaway, and you're probably looking at right around 25 on one big run, and then you're talking a couple of tush pushes. 40+ was kind of the sweet spot for me. It's minus 110, but I didn't want to go to 50+ rushing yards because I don't trust that.
I'm a little worried about how mobile he's going to be because of the knee stuff that we saw in the NFC, not really championship game, more the division round.
Got 63 rushing yards in that game, though.
Yeah, but that, again, to your point on one big run, he had one huge run,
and that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
And maybe he's fine, but it is something that it's just in the back of my head. It scares me away from any Hurts rushing props.
So one of the props that I really like is kind of more in line with what T-Bone just said. Under on the rushing total, but over on the touchdowns. So 2+ touchdowns in the game, tush push. You're not getting a bunch of yardage there. But under 36.5 rushing yards, you combine those two together in a parlay for the game, it's 19-1. So again, it's just under rushing yardage, but getting the tush push at the 1 yard line. So Saquon does all of the work, and then boom, at the 1 yard line, they push Jalen Hurts into the end zone. That's one I like. I also, again, I think the Chiefs will win this game, but if you're on the other side of it, I think there's some value on Jalen Hurts as the MVP of this one. He's plus 365 in some markets. That's a quarterback at more than 3-1 odds to win MVP. I know everybody's going to think that it is Saquon Barkley. The Chiefs have actually been excellent against running backs. Now, they've had their struggles at times, both against James Cook and Joe Mixon in the playoffs, but this year they were second in the league in rushing yards allowed per carry to running backs. Quarterbacks at times hurt them. I think it's possible that the Eagles end up, if they win this game, Jalen Hurts would be the guy that I would be betting on for MVP, given the value, because I think Saquon's like 2-1.
Yeah, I do like that, because you think back to that last Super Bowl between the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, and it kind of goes under the radar how good Jalen Hurts was in that game. That was the only game he played well in that playoff run.
It's the best game. He hasn't played a game as well as that since.
Yeah, like that right there, and I know, like we talked, I think you mentioned this yesterday, they're going to blitz the hell out of Jalen Hurts because he struggled against the blitz.
Correct.
I can't help but just think in the back of my mind of, hey, Hurts has done this against the Chiefs once before, almost made this where this would only be the back-to-back Super Bowl instead of the three-peat. I kind of like that one on the just because of the value there. If they win, to me, it's because the Chiefs couldn't stop Barkley. But I do like what you're saying. I love the value play there.
Anything else you got, Alex? Any other props? I'll get to more of these as we go this week. But
it's like Santa's naughty or nice list, though. I got to dig through all of this thing. I do have Saquon Barkley 120+ rushing yards. So kind of going against what you said in the under on the rushing yards.
In America.
Yeah, well, so it was at
not a bad thing, but
plus 117. I think we talked about this earlier this week. I don't know if he goes beyond 150. The sweet spot for me is like somewhere between 100 and 125, because I think the first half you'll see him pop off for a big run. Second half is where I think Kansas City really shuts it down. So my hope is you get close to 100 in the first half, and then the second half is a little bit softer there.
Yeah, the only other one that I've considered, I'm still not sure if I'm going to go in on it or not yet. Patrick Mahomes, 300+ passing yards on his alt line is plus 265.
If you want that, what I would prefer is a completions over. Because I don't think that they're going to have many big plays against this Eagles defense because of the style of defense that they play. But to Alex's point on Kelsey, I like the receptions total. I would go with the over on the completions if you think Mahomes is going to be throwing it a lot in this game, because it's probably going to be a lot of underneath stuff. I don't know if he gets the 300 yards, but he could have a ton of completions in this game.
I think I get what you're saying about the big plays. I think they get one or two, and I think that's what gets them there. And there's to me, there's going to be more value on the board here, right?
That's fair.
Plus two, what did I say? Plus 265. You're not going to get that on completions with Mahomes. And if they're going to win and he's throwing the football, I just expect Mahomes is going to, especially like if you're saying Worthy has a big game. I agree. Kelsey has a big game. Here we are, and all of a sudden that total starts to really go up. I think he can get to 300+.
Something that I would look at if I was looking at these markets as well. So the Chiefs' touchdowns in their recent Super Bowls, the first touchdown that they had in the game, it was a Mahomes rushing touchdown from 1 yard out. They did not score a touchdown against the Bucs. God, that was a disaster. Kelsey had a touchdown, and MVS had a touchdown. If you're looking at the first touchdown score for the Chiefs side, that is a bet that you can place. I would look at the receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Watson, some of those secondary receivers for the Chiefs, because they run all of that weird stuff near the goal line, similar to like the corn dog or whatever that they had with Kadarius Toney that he scored and that Sky Moore scored as well. They do some funky stuff near the goal line. I'd like Noah Gray. Some of the secondary pieces, I would look at them as potential value plays in that market.
DeAndre Hopkins is plus 500 to score a touchdown.
It's not a bad bet.
His over-under on receiving yards is 11.5.
He's barely playing. I don't like I don't know how many catches he'll have. I would take the under on whatever it is.
But I could see one
Touchdown
touchdown.
could be an interesting one.
I could see one touchdown, especially for a DeAndre Hopkins. Like, I could see one in for plus 500, like close to that. Juju Smith-Schuster's at plus 500. And if I think Juju could score a touchdown, DeAndre absolutely could score one touchdown.
Somebody on the text line said, BK, stop giving people betting advice. You've been dog water all year. I have been. However, in the playoffs have been great.
And
the playoffs have been really good for me.
BK's on betting lines. Props I'm not so sure about.
See, that's the thing. I'm decent at fantasy football. I'm terrible during the regular season. And I know our league has not gone well.
I'm decent at fantasy football.
The playoffs have been good for me. The only game that I missed was the LA Chargers. I believed in them for some reason against the Texans. But other than that, we got every game correct.
I think everybody in America believed in the Chargers over the Texans.
Yeah. Bad job by us. All right, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys have any questions, we'll try to have some answers next here on 101 ESPN.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings, as Super Bowl 59 is this weekend, and that means it's your last chance to play NFL Pick 6 this season. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. For the Super Bowl, I'm looking at Travis Kelce, more than 61.5 receiving yards, A.J. Brown, more than 70.5 receiving yards, and Jalen Hurts, more than 211.5 passing yards. 10 on that can win you 40 plus. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first timers, as new Pick 6 customers play $5 to get $59 in Pick 6 credits. Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my promo code 101WXOS. That's code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5 and get $59 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Game problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awards now withdrawal Pick 6 credit that expires in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now. The YouTube chat is off and running as well. We got a question over there. We got this in from Kyle over on the YouTube chat. We going with Mizzou or Tennessee tonight?
Mizzou.
T-Bone, you're going to be tuning in for this one, right? This is a big game.
Yeah, Tennessee. I've seen Tennessee play this year. They're really
They are
I've seen
very
Mizzou
good.
play.
I hate the style of basketball that Tennessee plays. Hate it. It's
Good.
horrible. It is so boring. It is so slow. It is old Virginia style basketball. But hot damn are they good at it. My God, are they good at it. They play unbelievable defense. They grind the game down to a screeching halt. But they're really good at it, and they're pretty damn efficient offensively. So I do think Tennessee wins this game. I think it's like a 10.5-point line. That seems a little high to me, especially given the fact that Tennessee wants to play as slow as they do. I think it'll be closer than that. I would take Mizzou plus the points, but I do think Tennessee wins.
It's unbelievable how you guys just overlook Mizzou. I'm the homer here. Mizzou wins.
You think they win on the road?
Three-point shooting is going to be lights out tonight.
Winning 3 games, that would be impressive because Tennessee has the best 3-point defense in the country.
We'll find out.
Winning 3 games on the road against top 15 ranked opponents would be one of the most impressive things that I've ever seen a Mizzou athletic team, any sport, do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who dictates the tempo tonight. And you don't get this a lot at the professional level. In college basketball, it really is an important thing. Because you're right, Tennessee plays so slow, and they really baited Illinois into that. Illinois wanted to play fast in that game, and they just couldn't do it. They couldn't get in transition. We'll see. Missouri, if they can get in transition, hit a couple of those threes like you're talking about, Alex, now you start to extend the floor. Now they've got to come out and defend it. Now you can blow by them off the dribble. I think Tennessee, though, they know how to do this. They know how to do this song and dance. I think they're going to dictate the tempo, and I think they're going to win tonight.
Teams, let's see here. Where do they rank on tempo this year? Tennessee, oh my God. They're 359th in tempo this season.
There's like 360 teams in college basketball.
Yeah. That's going to determine the game. Tennessee, if they have a weakness, it's ball control. Now, their point guard has missed some time, so that plays into it, but they do turn the ball over more often than you would otherwise expect. So if Mizzou can cause some of those steals that they're known for, get out in transition, make the game a little quicker tempo, that's the way they win this one. But, yeah, this is going to be tough. 6 o'clock tonight. It's a really fun matchup. We'll certainly be talking about that tomorrow. All right, this one comes from the 314. Alex, do you think that this will be Justin Falk's final season as a Blue?
It's hard to say certain. If I were to say a percentage on it, I would say 60% yes. You can't return with this same defense next year. We said that last year, and what did Doug Armstrong do? He went out there and changed the look of the defense. And you're going to be saying the same thing this year. I was just looking at this. Over the last 3 seasons, the Blues have gone from a 3.69 goals against per game team to a 3.02 goals against per game. And they were the 3.02 last year and this year currently. That's not making an improvement. Like, yeah, it's an improvement from where you were god-awful 3 years ago, but when they were competitive, they were sitting at 2.6 goals allowed per game. They're not back there yet. I think if you were to do a tier chart of defensemen that could be gone before next year, I would say Suter's going to be number 1. I think he's probably going to get traded at the deadline. And then it's a tie for second between Nick Leddy and Justin Falk. And I think if the Blues were to look at it and say, yeah, we can't come back with this same group, Falk would probably be the priority. I
don't think Falk's going to get moved. I just don't. I don't know how you can get another team to take on his contract at $6.5 million. I just don't see it. I don't know what team's going to do that. Unless you're throwing in assets to help move that contract, like they did when they moved Kevin Hayes in the offseason.
I don't really have draft picks to send.
That's the problem.
If you trade
unless
him,
you get some
trade
at the deadline.
next year's draft picks.
I'm skeptical, so I'm going to say Falk's still here next year.
Yeah, they could do that. They could acquire draft picks at the deadline.
Yeah.
And then tie those to players if they want to move on from them. Or it could be a part of a deal that another team, like, hey, you want to acquire this player. Well, third team that comes in, you've got to acquire this player, and we'll be the middleman and eat a lot of the salary.
I kind of like the idea of them doing hey, that's not working for you. This isn't working for us. Let's trade bad contracts. I'd be interested in that.
That smells like a Ferrario 5 that maybe I'll work on before Friday.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of move that this would require. I do not think that's a deadline move. I do think that's an off-season move. But if there's another team that has a guy making Even if it's a guy making $8 million a year, but it's on a 2-year deal, and then going back in the other direction is Falk at 6.5 or 3 years, I think it is after this. That's the kind. Is it 2 or 3 years left after
this? 2 years after
okay.
this, so he's got 2 more years. But
so,
and it's also a modified no trade clause after this. So a team's acquiring a guy who's got a list that he can trade away.
I'd be interested in that if I'm the Blues. Take on quote unquote bad money and see if a change of scenery can work.
And here's the thing to T-Bone's point. I don't know who would take that on. He's right. Like right now, somebody's going to look at this and say in the last 110 games, you've scored 4 goals and you're supposed to be an offensive threat. But typically how these go with NHL teams when they're looking for an upgrade, and right-handed defensemen are they're scarce at the trade deadline. Typically the lefties are the ones that are going pretty quickly. A team looks at this and say, yeah, but the prior 2 seasons when he was on a competitive team, he had 47 points and 16 goals and was a Norris Trophy candidate. Has he suffered from playing on a bad team? Because if a team needs an upgrade on their power play, they've got all of the forwards and say, we just need somebody who can run the power play. Somebody would take a chance if they can offload a bad contract.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll play a game of More Likely to Happen. You guys give us 2 scenarios. We will tell you which one is more likely. But next, can the Blues build without superstars? Is this a build that can work? It did in 2019. How do you recreate that, though? We'll talk about that and hear from a national analyst who had some thoughts on it next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so we're talking a lot about the big picture with the St. Louis Blues lately. And that's because, honestly, in the immediate future, it's hard to know exactly what this team's going to be. It doesn't feel like they're a playoff contender at this point. They would have to do what Detroit has done, which is win 7 games in a row multiple times since hiring a new coach.
Good luck with that.
We knew that somebody was going to do it. Unfortunately for the Blues, it hasn't been them, and so they're falling further and further behind in the standings. It doesn't feel like the playoffs are in play this year. So then it becomes a question of, okay, what does that mean? Because they wanted to be a playoff team this year desperately. They went out and made a couple of moves via the what are they called? The contracts, the
offer sheets.
Offer sheets, yeah.
Good God.
Made a couple of those moves. That was hard.
I saw the hands moving. I'm like, I guess we should help them or something.
They bring in Suter. They make a bunch of moves in the offseason with that goal in mind, but it hasn't worked. So you talked yesterday, Alex, with Mark Spector, who covers kind of the Western Canada portion of the NHL. And you asked him about how you can win without stars. He had an interesting answer. Here's what he had to say.
If you look at the Calgary Flames since they won a cup in 1989, and here they are again this year, sitting there in 8th place, in 9th place, maybe make playoffs, maybe not. I think if they make the playoffs, they're not beaten. They're coming in as a wild card. They're not beating anybody. So they've never drafted high either. So to me, that's the middle. The poster boy for the mushy middle has been the Calgary Flames, and I get it. St. Louis is kind of the same. They're too good to finish really deep in the standings, but they're not good enough to make me think, oh boy, if that team gets in the playoffs, they're really going to give somebody a run. But it's a hard deal. It's a hard deal to try to never drop below the mushy middle and get back up to where the Blues were a few years ago.
So what do you do? I think that's the question, Alex. Agreed. It's a hard deal. So then what? Are you suggesting tank? What is the alternative here?
I don't think tank really does you anything. If you fall into a top 5 pick, great. That's not going to make a difference because let's say hypothetically this team bottoms out the rest of the season and they draft 4th overall. And you draft one of these kids that's expected to be, at least from Corey Pronman's perspective on The Athletic, an all-star player. Well, that guy's not going to be impacting your team unless he's Macklin Celebrini or Connor McDavid next year. You're probably looking at 2 years away. And then you got to wait for that 2-year growth to say, okay, well, he's probably now ready to be an NHL player. So you're talking about another 3, maybe 4 years before that player becomes an actual impact player in the National Hockey League. And then where are you? You're 4 more years into Robert Thomas, who's 29 years old. You're 4 more years into Jordan Kyrou. He's 30 years old. You're 4 more years into Colton Parayko. He's probably not here anymore. So now you've got holes that you have to address that probably going back to the draft again. So how do you fix it? You have to make a trade. You have to be aggressive in the trade market and go out there and find somebody that you believe raises the ceiling to what your team is. What's your hole right now? You mentioned earlier, where are you elite right now? Nowhere. So how do we get elite in a certain area? To me, I don't know if a trade is going to make you elite defensively. Goaltending is what it is. I think your goaltending is better than what it's been in terms of stats this season, so you're going to have to look at your offense. You've got a Snuggerud, you've got a Dvorsky. Maybe they can be impactful players. I don't know right now. One could be a Hobie Baker Award winner. One could be putting up points in the American Hockey League at 19 years old that we haven't seen in a long year. To avoid being the Calgary Flames where you just continue doing this cycle, to Mark Spector's point, you have to be aggressive, go out this offseason, and make some type of move that impacts the top of your lineup.
It goes back to what Sonny Gray said at Cardinals winter warm-up, right? He said, hey, when you get stuck in the middle, you either have to really push or you have to kind of reset, or in this case with the Blues, it would be a rebuild. It would be what Army's always claimed he can do, yet he still hangs around this spot in the standings, which is, hey, I can make this roster a lot worse, and we could go through a rebuild. You got to pick a path. And right now the Blues have done what the Cardinals have done, which is, all right, we'll just kind of wait this out. We'll see what we have. Maybe we bring in a couple veterans to help piece some holes, like the Kevin Hayes move or the Suter move this offseason. You either have to say, you know what, we're tearing this down to the studs and rebuilding, and we are going for the top 5 pick, and not just for one season, but for consecutive seasons, or you really need to push. You almost need to do what Nashville did, and it hadn't worked for Nashville. They might be the cautionary tale of this, but Barry Trotz said, we're not going to wait around. We are now ready to push. We are going to go into free agency. We are going to go sign stars, now aging stars, and Steven Stamkos when they brought him in, But that's the path you're on right now if you're the Blues. You can no longer, in my opinion, continue to just sit with status quo and say, let's wait for the young guys to get here. Because I think you're stuck in the middle.
And that's why I believe you have to strike now. Because your problem, yes, you're waiting for the Snuggerud and the Dvorskys, and they'll be here next year, and hopefully they're impactful players. But you've got to strike while you've got a core of players that you think you can win with for the next however many years. And I'm not talking about becoming a Stanley Cup contender, but at least start being in the playoffs. Like to the Calgary Flames point of Mark Spector, like when they drafted Matthew Tkachuk, they already had Sam Bennett. They made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, and they got to the second round. Their problem was they were continuing to be stuck in that middle, and they were never able to get past it. Matthew Tkachuk won it out. Things changed quickly. I think you have to strike now while Robert Thomas is still young, while Jordan Kyrou is still young, while you still have a few more great years of Colton Parayko. You've got to establish that winning culture, because if you just finish around the 10th or 12th overall pick this year and next year, well, now you get to what Joey's talked about of losing, seeping into that locker room, and it's hard to get that out.
I think the aggressiveness is with sending out pieces other than Kyrou, Thomas, and potentially Booch. I think the aggressiveness is we're going to have to figure out a way to get out from underneath this Justin Falk trade. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more later on, Alex, but I think the aggressiveness is, man, it sucks to say this, we might have to move on from Brayden Schenn. Like that is where I think they can really kind of start to make some hay, is we're overhauling this middle of our roster. We believe in Thomas. We believe in Kyrou. They've clearly shown they have a belief in Pavel Buchnevich, and we'll see if he can get back to the form that they want him to be in. They love their goaltending situation. Like I think their defense is pretty damn good for the most part. I think Falk is a guy that you'd like to upgrade from right now, but otherwise I think you're in a decent spot there. And if you can move on from those two players, even if you have to eat some of the money, let's say it's two guys at $4 million a piece that you're getting rid of. So now you open up $8 million on your cap sheet next year, and the cap is going up by about $10 million. You've got some real money to work with there, man. And if I told you, hey, we're flipping Schenn and Falk, and in return, we are going to go out there and sign Mitch Marner, and we're getting one other piece that kind of fills into our middle six, right? We're getting a middle six center for us. That changes some stuff. That really changes the outlook for who you are as a team. Now you're looking at that top line. It's like, okay, we've got Holloway, Thomas, and Mitch Marner, and our second line is suddenly looking like, I don't know, Dvorsky, Kyrou, and Buchnevich, and Holloway is now on our third. Like, stuff starts to look a little bit more like a contending style of team, but it requires you to make some really aggressive moves. I don't know how you make them. I don't know what that looks like, but that's the kind of thing that's potentially out there for Doug Armstrong. And that is a decision. That is a path where you're now saying we're going down this path.
Well, yeah, because you're doing something that has gone against the grain of Doug Armstrong's philosophy since he's been here, going out there and bringing a superstar in. They've never done that. They've always said we don't need superstars. We build an impact mentality, and that's what we're talking about right now. I mean, you're talking about $14 million a year for one of Rantanen or Mitch Marner, and that's even to get in the conversation with some of the teams that are going to be aggressively trying to sign those guys. My only hesitancy with not trading away one of Kyrou, Thomas, and Buchnevich is the question that I think the front office is having. Are they part of the problem?
Maybe.
Because it says something that today Dylan Holloway skating on that top line. Guys, they have tried everybody on that top line of Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. It's been now Holloway, Neighbors, Saad, Texier, Toropchenko. They've gone through everyone. Bolduc, they've gone through everyone. And they've even split them up. And it still hasn't worked. So as much as I can look at it and say, yeah, you get out of some contracts and you try and bring in money, and I absolutely agree, a Marner changes some things. A Rantanen changes some things. But
I think that's the move. I think the next move for this team is to get aggressive in that lane. I don't know if it's a trade or free agency, but it's got to be something like that.
But what if you do it to that way, but look at this and say, look, we don't know if one of these core members are a part of our future because it hasn't worked out. You trade one of them to get something that fills a void for you elsewhere, and then you go out and spend money on one of those free agents.
You can do both.
And that's changing the core. And like, I think when they say observe, when Doug Armstrong was talking about observe, I think he's observing the leadership. And you got to look at the guys that wear the letters. It's Brayden Schenn, Justin Falk, Colton Parayko, Robert Thomas. Because that's where it all stems from. And I would put Pavel Buchnevich into that conversation because he's a part of the core, the leadership group. That's a part of the conversation that they're trying to figure out. But that's how you don't do it, Calgary. Because if if the Blues do what a lot of people want them to do, with just be bad this year, that's great, man. But you could probably get Nail Yakupov in the draft 4th overall, and then you're waiting 3 years for him to get to the NHL, and then 3 years he gets to the NHL, and you say, well, this guy's a bust, and now you start chasing your tail like the Calgary Flames have been doing.
It becomes a really difficult, like you're spinning. Now you're spinning your wheels. You're what Detroit has been, where it's the Yzer plan for a decade. And finally now the Yzer plan has all come together. We've got a -8 goal differential, and we're like one of 5 teams in the spot, in the mix for a playoff spot, and we've won 7 games in a row just to get into that mix. Like that's not where you want to be as an organization. Or you're Columbus, right? And you've done everything possible to try to make this thing go in the right direction. You've made aggressive moves, and you still stink.
Yeah.
Even now you're better, and you're 3 points out of the playoffs.
Real quick, because somebody said, why is Vegas able to do what they're doing by bringing in high-end players every year and still have success? They have the core leaders that they believe can help them continue to stay consistent. And that's Mark Stone, that's Alex Pietrangelo, and Shea Theodore. And they've moved leaders out of that team.
I was about to say, I don't think it's about leadership. I think it's about people want to play in Vegas, man.
Right, but
it is a super attractive place to play.
And
to me, it's the core of their, like, this is why Boston was so good for so long, because every guy that they would bring in had a Patrice Bergeron there, and the mindset was already established of how they were going to be as a team. Backus talked about this last week. Like, you came to Boston, you knew what the expectations were. And I think that's the same for Vegas. Yeah, they're going out and getting freaking Jack Eichel and Ivan Barbashev and all of these high-end players, but they come in and they know what's expected of them.
Kind of, but like Mark Stone's barely played over the last few years. So like
that's
Jack
decisions.
Eichel came in, sure. But Jack Eichel came in, and that dude became the leader of the team. Like, Jack Eichel just is now the best player on the Vegas Golden Knights.
That's what I think the Blues need to do. They're going to have to go out there and get a superstar and make him a part of the leadership group.
Eichel was super aggressive and super risky.
Look at Sam Reinhart with Florida.
We didn't know if Eichel was ever going to be the same player again.
He's coming off of like a neck surgery that hadn't been done.
Yeah, so... And Buffalo was like, no, please do not get that surgery. Like, the surgery you want, we are not signing off on that. And he was like, no, I'm getting it. And they're like, cool, we're trading you. Because if you get that, I don't know if you're ever going to be the same guy that you were previously. And Vegas was like, yeah, Jack Eichel's available? Like, yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
And this is why I go back to Elias Pettersson. And I don't know if he's even available anymore because of the JT Miller. But everybody says, nope, no way, I'm not bringing that guy in. He's a problem. Jack Eichel was a problem. Jack Eichel was a major problem for Buffalo. Ryan O'Reilly was a major problem for Buffalo. Everyone was sick of him and saying he was a locker room issue. Sometimes you have to be aggressive and take a chance. But guess what? If that chance goes wrong, welcome to being in a rebuild.
But welcome to being a GM, right? He took a chance by letting Alex Pietrangelo walk.
Took a chance by paying Broberg $4 million.
Took a chance by going out there and acquiring Holloway as well. Like, Doug Armstrong is not afraid of these chances. But his bets are normally smaller. Like, people give him this label of being a super aggressive GM, and he is, compared to most of the other general managers across the league. But the thing that he has really avoided is that top-of-the-market type of a deal. He has avoided that the way that the Cardinals have. He doesn't get the same criticism for it because the Blues have had more recent success. But if the Blues' most recent Stanley Cup was a decade ago, the way that it is for the Cardinals, 15 years almost at this point for the Cardinals, we'd be talking about him and saying, why don't they wade into that deep water? Why don't they ever go out and get that superstar the same way that we do about the Cardinals? And I think we're getting close to that point in time where it's going to be a necessity for this team.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's hard to keep up with the Joneses eventually. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we are diving into the junk drawer. But coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. It's time for More Likely to Happen here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you which one is more likely here on BK and Ferrario. All right, boys. More likely to happen. Saquon Barkley rushes for at least $150 in this game against the Chiefs, or the Chiefs have a wide receiver go for at least 100 yards against the Eagles.
I'm going to say Chiefs have a wide receiver go at least 100 yards because I think Travis Kelce is considered a wide receiver in this.
He's a tight end.
That's ridiculous. He plays like a freaking wide receiver.
No, he's a tight end. If you go to your fantasy draft and you are looking at the positions.
Fine, if we're going to label it a tight end, he's a wide receiver.
BK's getting you with a stinking...
I know. The technicality over here, fine.
I feel like that is more than reasonable.
Just because you opened your stupid mouth, I'm going to say Saquon Barkley, and the Eagles beat the Chiefs.
Yeah. Fly, Eagles, fly, baby. Yeah, I'm going Saquon rushing for 100 because I don't think a Chiefs receiver
150.
Or sorry, 150. I don't think a Chiefs receiver will get 100.
200 because BK
I think Kelce will get 100 receiving yards, but with the technicality...
He's not a wide receiver, man. He's a tight end.
I know, but it's called receiving yards, not tight end yards. Think about it, huh? What do you think of that, Brandon?
It's called receiving.
I think it was a more than reasonable thing to throw out there.
God, now he's going to go for 300 rushing yards in the game.
I saw this. Dan Orlovsky tweeted it out earlier today. The Kansas City Chiefs have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in any of their last 18 playoff games since they hired Steve Spagnuolo to be their defensive coordinator. Did you guys know that? And the Eagles have not allowed a single 100-yard receiver. Excuse me, they have. That's rushing. Whiplash, sorry.
What happened?
He's a running back, not a wide receiver, BK.
Yeah.
Or a tight end.
I actually think it's more likely that we end up seeing a Chiefs wide receiver go for 100 yards in this game. I don't know who it's going to be. I couldn't tell you. I would say probably most likely is Xavier Worthy, but I don't think that we are going to see Saquon rush for 150. I think somebody on the text line mentioned earlier today, BK, we saw some running back success against the Chiefs in the AFC divisional round and in the championship game, and that's true, but the Chiefs were selling out to avoid losing to C.J. Stroud or Josh Allen in those rounds. The running games in those games was almost secondary. In this game, it's very clear what the Chiefs need to do. They have got to stop Saquon Barkley. That's priority, to quote John Mozeliak, that's priority number 1, 2, and 3 for them in this game. So I don't think Saquon goes for 150 plus.
Somebody made a really good point on our Air Comfort Service text line. You wouldn't even have time to click between the wide receiver and tight end on Clicker on a fantasy draft if BK was in charge.
Sure.
True.
Very true.
The only receivers with at least 100 yards this year against the Eagles, Adam Thielen, Puka Nacua, Jaden Reed. Those are the only 3 receivers with at least 100 receiving yards this year against the Eagles. All 3 of them line up primarily in the slot, interestingly enough.
Guys, more likely to happen. Tom Stillman spends to the salary cap ceiling or drops down closer to the salary cap floor next year? I don't know what the floor is going to be at. The cap's at 95.5. I'm assuming the floor is probably going to be like 70, 60, something like that.
Ceiling. He spins to it every year. Even this year when we all thought no chance that they do. They've done it.
Yeah. I think it will be more likely they spend to the ceiling just because he's been willing to do that. And even though this year has not gone the way the Blues were expecting, I could still see where, they convince themselves, hey, it's better for us to spend to the ceiling, and then we can potentially get back into the playoffs rather than cutting payroll.
Can I throw one more in real quick? Yeah, more likely to happen. The Blues don't shed any contracts at the deadline or shed $10 million at the trade deadline.
The latter. Or, I mean, the former. I don't think they'll be able to get $10 million off the books.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. If they could trade both Justin Falk and Nick Leddy, it'd be great. We'll talk coming up in the 1 o'clock hour about the potential of trading Brayden Schenn. It sounds like that's something that at least Toronto fans are interested in. But I don't think they'll be able to shed that much salary. I think they'll have to eat money, too, on both of those deals.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they'll be able to shed either of those contracts, and they'd have to eat money or even attach an asset to it for some of those deals to get done. So I'd say it's more likely they don't trade any or don't.
Where would you lean?
Shed.
I would say it's more likely they shed $10.5 million.
Huh.
I think they find a way to get off of 2 bigger contracts at this deadline.
T-Bone?
Guys, more likely to happen. The Blues get to 85 points or the Cardinals win 85 games.
Ooh.
Neither?
What are the Blues on pace for points-wise this year?
So what they're at, 53 right now, not even at a 500-point percentage, and with 28 games to go. Ooh. 54, so like 30 more points. So probably close to 85. I'll say it's more likely 85. I don't think the Cardinals get to 80 wins this season.
I think I would probably go with the Blues, strangely enough. 85?
Really?
85 doesn't feel that crazy.
Neither does that for baseball wins, considering last year's Cardinals team almost got there.
Yeah. I just think that the Cardinals are likely going to be disassembling their team at the deadline this year.
Avengers, disassemble!
You say that, and I think the Blues roll over dead by the deadline.
Blues are on
they've
pace
already
for
started
41 point, or for 82 points right now.
Yeah, I think it's more likely the Cardinals could win 85 than the Blues get to 85 points, because this team doesn't look like one that's going to handle adversity well when, Army says we're blowing whatever we can away from this roster.
Sure.
Considering that this team's already kind of rolled over dead.
Might get Dvorsky. Maybe he adds a little bit of energy into the mix. I'm not like buying any of this, what I'm selling to you right now, but the schedule also opens up a little bit down the stretch compared to what they're playing against right now. Right now, it is worth noting they're going up against some of the best teams in the NHL right now. So we're seeing the gap, and it exists, and it's wide, and they do not compare to these teams that they're going up against. Mentioned it earlier today. They're 1-4-1 in their last 6 games against teams that are currently in the top 3 of their division. They don't stack up against these teams. But later on in the schedule, you're going up against Chicago, Nashville, Montreal, Detroit, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but March, you play so many games in so little time, and for how this team struggles with little rest time and practice time, like you play...
They also struggle with too much rest time
3,
and practice time.
4, 5.
It's a struggle period.
You play 5 back-to-backs in the month of March, and I don't believe you have won the second game of a back-to-back yet this season. I'll have to double-check that.
How could you? You can't win 3 in a row.
Hey!
I was just stating the obvious, okay?
Let's get to the text line, BK, because I don't like this negativity right now.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You guys give us 2 different scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. More likely that Radek Faksa or Ryan Suter re-sign with the Blues.
I'll say Ryan Suter more likely re-signs with the Blues because only signs with teams in the Midwest and the Central Division. So
he's also fit well.
Yeah, when we talked about this the other day, he's not going to Winnipeg. So really, your options are Colorado or Chicago, and I don't think he's going to Chicago. And yeah, I think if you can find a way to get out of a couple of contracts next year, that's a perfect third pair defenseman to be there that could play top 4 minutes if you need him to.
I would also go with Suter.
I would too. I think he fits well, and I think he'll cost a little less than Faksa. Faksa will probably get what? $2-3 million on the market?
I think it might be closer to 2. He's up there in age, making 3.9 now. Hasn't had the greatest year.
Sooner we can just give the league minimum and you play 60 games. Here's an extra $100K.
Exactly. I
like that.
He'll be 41 years old. He doesn't need that much.
Yeah, Faksa, guys that put up 20 points a year don't typically get paid a ton of money.
Yeah.
So I think 2.5.
I think you could throw Faksa money at Trent Frederick this free agency and probably get him to sign here.
That would be. I think we're going to be blown away by the amount of money that Trent Frederick gets in free agency.
Maybe, but
4.5 plus.
I think the St. Louis thing always makes it a little more interesting.
Maybe it's worked in the past, certainly. All right, more likely to happen. Mizzou basketball makes it to the Elite Eight, or Illinois football makes it to the college football playoff.
Oh, this is easy.
Yeah, Mizzou basketball makes it to the Elite Eight.
Agreed.
No.
It's
Illinois,
not
Illinois making the playoff, man.
That's not going to happen.
They're getting buzz nationally. I don't get it, but they're getting real buzz.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, I'm going Illinois makes the college football playoff. I'm going to say it
who's
with my
star
chest.
on the offensive side?
Luke Allmeyer,
okay,
baby.
who's he throwing to?
We're going to figure that out.
To be fair, he's not going to throw.
Yeah,
They're just going to run the ball 100 times again.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
To be fair, I'm also saying the same thing about Mizzou right now. Who are they throwing the football to?
They've got real players.
And the defense is going to be good again. Yeah, the defense should be good again for the Illini.
I think Mizzou might have a top 3 defense in the SEC next year. That's my
I
hot
agree
take
to
on the
that.
team.
So playoff or bust for Mizzou.
They're getting closer, yeah. I just don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be.
Don't you throw
Your
it.
situation with the receivers is our situation with the quarterback, and that's a little more alarming in my mind.
Nah, it's fine.
The quarterback for Mizzou can run. I just don't know if he could throw it particularly
Then
well.
don't throw.
Fair.
I've seen college football teams get to the playoff and not be able to throw. Hello, Tennessee.
And Penn State.
And Penn State, yeah.
Notre Dame.
Yeah.
All of the teams that played
Riley
this year.
Leonard, their best offense was Leonard says hike and then goes.
That was their entire first drive.
Yeah.
All right, coming up in 10 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, can the Cardinals follow the Cubs model from the past couple of years? I know that's not super encouraging, but at least it gets you back into contention. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues fell to the Oilers last night. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Florida Panthers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 7 with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See you at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, Alex, so I don't know if the Cubs are exactly the team that the Cardinals fans are looking to resemble in the future, but it at least takes this thing a step forward. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. As I was thinking earlier today, I was looking at those projections again from Pacoda.
Oh, you just stare at them, eh?
Yeah,
like
sometimes.
Those Maxim posters you used to have on your wall.
Little different, but similar. Yeah, taking way more time.
I don't know what you did with them. I'm just saying you were staring at them a lot.
Sure. So Pacoda has the Cubs as the clear-cut best team in the NL Central. They got them 10 wins ahead of the next best team in the division. So I was thinking to myself, last year the Cubs won 83 games. That feels at least in play for the Cardinals this year. If you think they're going to win a couple of more, few less, whatever. They're in that like 75 to 85 projection, somewhere in that range. So they'll fall somewhere kind of similar to what the Cubs were last year. Ho-hum season. Nobody really gets excited about it. And you leave the year saying, okay, well, at least we got some answers on the young guys, I suppose. And then this offseason, the Cubs have been, compared to the rest of baseball, pretty aggressive. They went out and traded for Kyle Tucker, who's top 15 player in the sport, conservatively speaking.
Yeah.
They've added to their bullpen. They look like they have a good team going into this year. So my question to you, Alex, do you think that's basically what the Cardinals are hoping to do? Win 83 games this year, be a little more aggressive next year, and then hopefully get back to contending in the NL Central? Like, is that the plan in your mind?
Yeah, I would imagine, because try and get to 83 wins this year would essentially, that would outperform what my expectations are. And if you're going to do that, you're getting some really good answers on a lot of your young players that we're talking about. Walker, Wynn, Gorman, these guys. And then from there, you look at this, and if you're going to go by what the Cardinals tell us, which I advise you not to, but then they said, look, we're resetting the books. We're looking at our younger players, and then we hope to go back to the point where we can start spending some money. And then look at the Cubs. They go out there and they sign Imanaga, and then they go trade for Kyle Tucker. Now, do they re-sign Kyle Tucker? Probably not. That's a Cardinals move also. But
their beat writer just went on foul territory and said he doesn't expect them to re-sign him.
Cardinals there.
Just
as
wild.
Also. But, yeah, if you could get to 83 wins this year, that would probably be the Cardinals looking at this and saying, yeah, the Cubs did that. They got answers on all their young players, and then they said, now let's go find some answers outside that makes us even better.
Yeah, I think that's what the Cardinals are really hoping for, is that they can get answers on young guys. They hope that they're positive. Like, if they get 83 wins, that probably tells me that two of these 4 players ended up reaching the ceiling the Cardinals had projected for them. Nootbaar, Gorman, Walker, Herrera. 2 of those 4 would probably have to hit their ceiling for them to get to 83 wins. And then you get your answers on some of those guys. Then when Chaim Bloom comes in, you got that fresh payroll that you were just talking about, to where you can increase it if you want to. He gets kind of clean books to try and go out and do what he thinks is best for the organization moving forward. The thing I don't understand is why that couldn't have happened this year. Because they won 83 games last year. They finished above 500 last season. Even though, like, the Pike Dag said, like, this is a terrible baseball team, they should have won 76 games. So why was it that this year couldn't have been the year where you kind of did some of this, right? You still could have had some opportunities for some young guys. You could have gone out and tried to do something to help this core, whether it be adding a starting pitcher, moving some money out to bring some money in. And instead, they've just kind of stayed pat. I mean, they've literally stayed pat. They've added $0 to this team via free agency, and they just cut $60 million off their payroll. Like, this still felt like another season in which they could have continued to push and really made themselves better from a year ago, and they didn't do it.
But it was money. Money's the answer to your question. Now, nobody's going to like that answer, but I think that's it. I think it is as simple as, like, if you add money to the books, you've got to remove money from the books, and they just clearly weren't going to do all of that stuff this offseason. You could argue they should have, but that they were never going to do that. So you take a step back, you learn the stuff about the young guys this year. Like, even if I don't love the plan, I respect that they at least have a plan now, and it's better than what it's been in recent seasons. Low bar to clear, but they've cleared it nonetheless, as long as they, trade Arenado the way that they said they were going to.
The plan's still not executed.
Whatever it takes.
Not yet, but we'll see. We'll judge them when we get to the end of the offseason on that.
Heard that before.
A week.
Heard that before.
As we talk about this, though, I look at their books for next year, and T-Bone, you mentioned kind of clear the books. There's a lot of money coming off. Michaelis, Matz, Fedde, Helsley, they're currently all scheduled to come off of the books next year. It's entirely possible that at least one of or multiple of Arenado, Sonny Gray, and Wilson Contreras are off the books as well. If you end up doing that, you have no money committed. Those are the only three real contracts, like non-arbitration deals, that are still on the books for next year. Arenado, who you're trying to trade currently, and my guess would be by then, hopefully, you've dealt him. And then Sonny and Wilson Contreras. I think it's entirely possible one of those guys, and I would bet on Sonny being the guy, is dealt at the deadline or next offseason. That means you have one guy at $18 million in Wilson Contreras that is on a non-rookie entry-level deal arbitration. You're talking about having less than $100 million committed to your books next year. And you've got some answers on some of the young guys. I'm going to say the thing that is going to age poorly because there's no chance they actually do this,
and we'll cut it.
That's how you go get a Kyle Tucker. That's how you go get a Vlad Guerrero Jr. or a Dylan Cease or Zach Gallen or Framber Valdez or whoever your favorite free agent is on the market next year, is by removing this money from your books, not going out and making the move that you're talking about, T-Bone, to just get yourself back to 85 wins, and to find out what the young players are this year, and then really push not for the next year, like Cody Bellinger's a free agent again. Bo Bichette is on the market. Luis Ariz is out there. Josh Naylor. That's the market I would otherwise expect the Cardinals to shop in most off seasons. Avoid that. Avoid it entirely. Don't get any of those like 12 to 25 best free agents in baseball. Go get one of the top 5 guys. Go get the young star in Gallen, Cease, Guerrero, or Tucker. Go get one of those guys next year. And now we're talking about a team that can actually compete again, or at least you're at the starting point of it. And you give yourself 5 years to be able to capitalize on players in their prime. They're not going to do that, but
I was going to say, that sounded all
You
great.
spent this whole segment trying to pump us up.
And
that should be the plan, though.
It should be, but that comes down to, and this is where they keep saying, hey, we will get the payroll back there. Now, they don't lay out a plan of like how they do that, right?
But they don't even have to. But in my scenario, they don't have to.
But I don't even know if it's necessarily a plan, but it is admitting to, hey, we have to change the way we operate, right? We do have to start shopping in the big boy market.
Correct.
And it just has to be once, right? It just has to be the one time.
Exactly.
And they won't do it. And instead, all I've heard is, well, we're a draft and develop organization. You are not a draft and develop organization.
But,
you have not been that under the DeWitts.
So somebody said, BK, you're in fantasy land. I probably
Yeah.
But can I try to sell it to him?
No, you just said a no to yourself.
What do you think Kyle Tucker is going to get AAV wise? 40 mil? 40 a year?
35 to 40, yeah.
10 by 400, so yeah. 35 to 40 would be my guess.
Okay, let's call it 40. Let's go on the high end of things.
Now we're out.
Probably. You guys know what you're paying this year to Miles Michaelis and Steven Matz?
30, yeah.
Paying $30 million for those guys to be below average pitchers for you. I'll be
throw in Eric Fedde, and you're basically paying $40 million.
Sure. Hey, you've got $40 million committed to those 3 players. What would you rather have? Fedde, Matz, and Michaelis filling up 3 spots in your pitching staff, or Kyle Tucker? Or, let's make it another way. What do you guys think is going to be the AAV for Dylan Cease? 30, 35?
Probably.
Somewhere around there?
I'd say 30.
I guess.
He'll be 30 years old when he hits the free agent market.
Yeah, he'll probably be right around. He'll probably be anywhere between 25, 30, yeah.
Okay, let's call it 30. That is effectively what you're paying to Steven Matz and Miles Michaelis combined. That's what I'm saying here is like, yes, you can go do the thing that you've always done, or you can go back to the top of the market. It has worked with Sonny Gray. What you've received from him so far, now the rest of the team around him has not been what you expected them to be. But Sonny Gray has performed as expected thus far. And that's what you get when you go to the top of the market. Most of the time, those guys are really good players when you end up acquiring them. The Cardinals shop in the middle of the market, and then they get screwed, and they're like, oh, man, this downside's worse than we thought. Yeah, it sure is. And you end up still with really bad back end of those contracts without getting the good out of it. You don't extract any value on the front end, and you get all of the downside on the back end. Go do the thing that the other teams that are really smart that have won at a high level are doing. So I do think that not only could the Cardinals go be what the Cubs have been, they could actually take it to another level and get the guy that the Cubs just traded for and sign him next year and give him the crazy market value deal and do it because you've been able to reset your books this year and you've done the thing that you've refused to do now for 20 years. Most of that shouldn't have been done, but in the last 5 years, at some point, it was going to need to be done, and finally, you're actually doing it. This is what that allows you to do, is for next offseason, when there's a really freaking good free agency class, a really good one, relative to most season standards, go make the move. Or trade for somebody. Just be super aggressive.
Hell yeah.
Junk Drawer coming up next. Alex, when was the last time you went to the grocery store?
Sunday. I go every week.
Did you guys buy eggs?
No, not this time. I buy eggs So I buy eggs from Costco. Shout out Costco because it's bulk and I don't have to buy them very often.
So we have a market right down the street from us. It's called the Midtown Market. And
sounds pretty uppity.
I mean, it's a locally owned grocery store. I don't know.
I worry where this is going.
Only vegan food there.
No, can we get away from that for a second? I'm talking about buying eggs.
Grass-fed eggs.
The eggs, we do get that normally. The eggs for a carton of them. How much would you guess the Cardinals? 12 eggs.
Oh, we're getting political today.
I know.
I don't want to do
It's
this.
why
Man.
I didn't like you
It's
bring it
the
up.
bird flu. This has nothing to do with
It's
politics.
the bird flu.
Better.
I want to say when I bought them 2 weeks ago, I think they were around like a carton, 12 of them. They were probably like 3 something.
No, you need to go to the grocery store again, brother.
No, you just go to a rich grocery store. I go to the ones that matter.
No,
I don't know. I wouldn't even know what to guess here.
$11. It was
Okay, I was gonna say
$11 for 12 eggs.
I did not pay $11 for 12 eggs when I bought them last week.
I know they're going up, dude. Like exponentially. Now, when I went to Schnucks, because I was like, I can't do that. I'm not paying $11 for eggs. It was $7 for the eggs, so it was a little cheaper there. But dude, it is getting so bad that now there's burglaries taking place. A theft occurred at Pete and Jerry's Organics in Greencastle, Pennsylvania. 100,000 eggs were stolen from the back of a distribution trailer in Pennsylvania. Those eggs are worth roughly $40,000 and going up by the day, I might add.
You can't even eat all of those eggs before they go bad.
That was my question. What's the plan here?
Yeah.
What are you doing with those?
I get it. I also have thought about stealing some eggs lately. But what do you do with 100,000 eggs? Do you then take it to the black market and offer it to the local Schnucks? And be like, hey, I've got 100,000 eggs. You guys want to buy them black market? I'll give you half the cost for them and you can mark them up.
I guess you hard boil a lot of them too and just eat them that way.
I genuinely have no idea what you're going to do with this.
I will consider buying chickens and putting them in my backyard so that I can just have eggs that way.
There you go. You've got a pretty spacious
I got a big backyard. That's what I'm thinking of because I'm not paying that. Like on Instacart, I just pulled it up to pick up eggs. It's $6.75.
It's crazy, dude. Somebody on the text line said, guys, I own a small local grocery store. My cost was $7.50 a carton this week.
Dang.
Yes. And that's coming from the actual distributor.
Yeah.
Whew.
Just no eggs in our house.
On them. It's crazy. It's insane right now, dude. The prices for eggs. Kara said, we're going to stop eating eggs here pretty soon.
Luckily, my girls don't like eggs. I just use them when I cook them with things. So just find a replacement for it or something like that.
Eggs at all.
There's a limit now. You go to places and they'll be like, you can't buy more than 10.
It's like
toilet paper 2.0.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's
well,
crazy.
I'm glad the toilet paper thing figured itself out because we would be wiping with a lot of random things.
Somebody said, just left Sam's Club, $7.50 for 2 dozen eggs. So, if you want to go to Costco, Sam, sounds like that's a place to get them for a little cheaper right now.
You think I'm going to go to Costco when this is the problem? A place would be a nightmare right now to try and get eggs there. You'd be fighting like it's Black Friday to get eggs out of that place.
So in August, it was $3.85 for a carton on average. Today, the average carton is $5.50. $5.50 a carton.
You know,
Like you said, only going up
just
here
double.
potentially.
That's at least a food, though, that I can't avoid. You know?
Sure.
Like if this was something like, and I who knows, milk might get to this point, but milk the girls need. So it's you have to buy that. Eggs I can avoid and just buy it when
What would be the worst thing for you guys? You feel like you need it?
Mine would be milk or bread because between the milk that they drink and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at our house, we can't survive with one of those two.
Yeah,
And I can't buy a cow to get my own milk. I could, but I don't trust myself to milk them.
For us, it would be fruit because Luca he houses an entire thing, an entire package of raspberries.
Luckily,
in a
I
day.
avoid the fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, we know, buddy.
I think bread
Anything
would
that
be
grows
the
on
number
the
one
ground,
thing.
T-Bone is out on.
He once licked a thing of broccoli, and I think that's as much.
Did you watch it when he did that? Or?
I thought it was interesting.
Oh,
There's an OnlyFans account for that.
oh, yeah, there is. You should totally start that, T-Bone.
We
Just be the broccoli
seriously
licker.
on our vacation
About starting an
about
OnlyFans?
starting an OnlyFans for feet.
For who, though? You or Kara?
Kara, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say,
She
nobody
doesn't
wants to
have
see
any
your nasty
tattoos.
feet.
She doesn't have any birthmarks. We're thinking about starting it up.
Well, people don't like tattoos on feet.
Now you just can identify people that way. So
Oh, we get that skin color makeup. Hey, if she's in, I'll talk to my wife. Maybe Katie will be in on it too. Do a dual feet thing. T-Bone, you in?
I'm out.
Yeah, I couldn't pull that off. I've got Sasquatch feet, so came over. There might be people into that, but
Yeah, there's people into everything,
just,
man. It's a lot of hair.
Looks like I'm wearing a sock when you take the sock off.
Fair.
There was a stretch there.
Can we go back to sports?
There was a stretch there where Katie and I dated. I would not take my shoes and socks off around her.
Sounds like a smart idea.
I don't think she saw me without socks on until we were engaged.
Really?
Yeah. I'm very
That self-conscious
insecure about my feet.
Man, you're Italian. This is what we deal with.
Yeah, but it's weird. Like, there's certain areas where the
it
hair
is
is
weird.
Your Fozzie Bear on your
thriving,
feet. I mean,
and then
it's
there's
fine.
certain areas that the hair's not thriving. One of them's the
Wanna talk
legs.
about it?
I am talking
I
about
have
it.
a bare spot on my calf. I don't know if it's because my calves are like hulking out of my
Oh yeah,
my
mine's the
skinny
chest.
jeans or what?
Mine's the
yeah,
chest.
I have one of those too. Thanks.
Well, that's your fault. That's your fault. No, like
No, it's literally your fault.
Obviously, my face grows the hair. The chest is bare, and then everything else grows hair.
Alex messed up my wax on my chest.
It was a punishment, sir.
I've never grown back hair on my chest. Never
You're-
again.
you're
Just
welcome.
barren right there.
You are welcome.
Coming up next, is this the best chance for the Blues to move on from Brayden Schenn? And is that something they should actually think about at this year's trade deadline? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So earlier today, Alex, we were listening to Sportsnet, and one of their main shows got Justin Braun, Kiprios, a couple other guys on there. They were basically going through, hey, how do the Toronto Maple Leafs get a center?
Yeah, they need a third-line center bad.
And they need somebody that can come in and legitimately help them, not just be like a Roddick Fox. So, like, they need a real contributor on that third line. And so they were going through a bunch of guys. They were talking about legit, like, I mean, Nazem Kadri was one of the players that they had mentioned.
Dylan Cousins from the Buffalo Sabres is another one that was brought up.
So they want somebody that can come in and produce like 50-plus points, that type of a player. So one of the names that they brought up was Brayden Schenn. Mm-hmm. They said, man, it makes a ton of sense. He plays the style that they're looking for. And I'm kind of trying to paraphrase here because it was a very long segment. But in the end, they basically came to the conclusion, like, man, if he didn't have 3 years and $6.5 million left on each of those seasons on his deal, he would be the perfect player for them to bring in. So the reason why I bring this up, Alex, is because it's being brought up elsewhere, not just here. Brayden Schenn's a good player. He's having a really good season. That second line with him as the center has been really the best thing that the Blues have had to offer all year long with him, Holloway, and Kyrou. He's got a full no-trade clause. I don't know if he wants to go anywhere. Maybe he just loves being a Blue, whatever. Walk down this hypothetical scenario with me, though. What if Toronto called? Says, you know what? We're not going to take on that full deal, but if you'll take it down to like $4 million a year, that's a third-line center type of a salary. Maybe 4.5. Blues have to eat $2 million a year for the next 3 seasons. We'll take on Brayden Schenn, and we'll give you a third-round pick, prospect, something like that in return. But mostly this is about getting the money off of your books. Do you think this is something that the Blues should explore this year at the trade deadline? Again, understanding he's got a full no-trade clause and he basically determines where he goes or if he wants to go. Is this something you think the Blues should or will explore?
I think you should be exploring every single thing that you can of how to switch things up with your team, because you've now, if this season continues to go the way we're expecting it, that's 3 straight years of you missing the playoffs and drafting in the top half of the league. He would be towards the bottom of my priority list because of the way Brayden Schenn plays. I want all of my players to emulate that. I mean, last night was a perfect example. Brayden Schenn willed the team back into that game. He was hitting every single thing possible in the second and third period. And he's been centering, in my opinion, the most successful line since the beginning of December with Jordan Kyrou, and Dylan Holloway. And at $6.5 million, I know people are like, get that off the books. Over the next 3 years, it's going to be a 5% cap hit because of the cap going up.
It basically becomes what a $4 to $4.5 million cap hit is in this year.
And that's a third-line center, and that's a perfect third-line center for me. But, and this is the big but, if a team's calling and saying we want that and they're willing to take almost all of the money off of my books, yeah, I'd have to look at it, because I love Brayden Schenn. I think Brayden Schenn is an incredible player and an incredible leader, but obviously something's not working from him to the rest of his team. And if somebody wants that, this is how you change things up. I think there would have to be a caveat with this. Like, if we go down this hypothetical path and they're moving on from Brayden Schenn, you're getting rid of that money, but now I'm willing to go spend that money on an upgrade for my team. I'm going to this offseason to bring in Rantanen, Mitch Marner, because if you just get rid of Brayden Schenn and say, cool, we cleared $6.5 million off of our cap hit, now Sundqvist is our third-line center for next year.
Yeah, we know that's not going to be their plan.
I can't sit here, as much as if you would have asked me this last season, no way in hell, because I think you need Brayden Schenn. Brayden Schenn is the heart and soul of a team like this. But now I've got 3 straight years of the same message coming out of that locker room of, we're not ready to start games. Now, they looked good in the last 2. But does it continue? We don't have enough energy. You've gone through 3 coaches. At some point, you do have to look at the leadership core of the team and say, what's going on here?
So, to me, it's not about Brayden Schenn at all. Like, in terms of what he brings to the table leadership-wise or anything like that. Like, I don't have any issues right now. This year, Brayden Schenn's performance has been good. Full stop. There is nothing more really to discuss there. He's been a good player, a contributing member. He is the least of my worries about the St. Louis Blues in 2025. But if the Blues are planning to be a contender for the foreseeable future and they're not there yet, Schenn's going to be 34 next year, man. Players that play the way that Brayden Schenn does, generally speaking, and I'm generalizing here, don't age all that gracefully. it typically, once it drops, and this was always their concern with David Backes as well, once it goes away, it's just not there anymore. And at $6.5 million, yes, that's going to be less as a percentage of the cap than it is now over the next few seasons. But what else would I be able to get with that money? What could I go to the market and be able to acquire? I do think Trent Frederick's going to get more than you do, Alex. I think he's probably going to be in that $5+ million range. But he's, 27?
Yeah.
So can I get a guy in Trent Frederick that is a good leader from the area, can contribute 40 to 50 points a year every year, give me 15 to 20 goals every year? So basically you're getting production-wise something similar to what Brayden Schenn was giving you, but at a cheaper deal, and he's more likely to age gracefully over the next 3 seasons than what Brayden Schenn will. And again, I'm doing that for a cheaper price than what Brayden Schenn's at. Is that a smart move for me? I can see how the answer to that is yes. And I would also add this. If you think that he's going to age poorly, this might be your one chance to do this. Because if you continue along this path with Brayden Schenn and he gets worse next year and it falls off that cliff, well, now nobody's taking it. And now you're in the spot with Schenn that you currently feel like you might be with Justin Falk, where it's just like, oh, well, who's taking on $6.5 million for Justin Falk? That is where the concern comes in of you right now could probably get an asset for him. Soon you're going to have to give up an asset with him if you want to get him off the books.
My other concern with this, too, is, and I know T-Bone's one of, and there's a lot out there that don't buy into the whole leadership thing or the captaincy. I would be very concerned that if you move a Brayden Schenn, you're giving the captaincy to somebody that's not ready. And I don't know who that is. Maybe it's Robert Thomas. Maybe it's Jake Neighbors. Whomever they would deem the next captain, I'd be very concerned that that makes things worse than what it already is.
Totally. I'm with you.
And I think that's a problem right now. What you can't do is make things worse than what it is right now when Dvorsky and Snuggerud get here, because you can't break those players. Those players are part of the future for you. And I think having a Brayden Schenn around, although it has struggled these past 3 years.
That's the thing. It's like, yes, it could get worse, but it's not in a good place now.
But then but we all know that Brayden Schenn's the type of guy.
I'm with you.
Aren't we asking the question, where else is the problem if we don't believe it's Brayden Schenn?
100%. Yes, I am. And eventually it might become one of those questions where it's like, hey, you guys sink or swim. You guys want to take this on? You want the leadership? Well, here it is. And you're doing with them basically what the Cardinals are doing this year, where they're saying, hey, Brendan Donovan, take it on. Nolan Gorman, take it on. Jordan Walker, you want to be a part of this leadership core? Cool. Take it on. Mason Wynn, go. Run with it. It's your clubhouse. Nobody else is here to save you. Like, this is your team now. Go make it into whatever you want it to be. And there's going to come a point in time, maybe it's not now. Maybe it's not even for the next 2 years. Maybe it's 3 years down the road. There will come a point in time where that transition does take place between Schenn and the veterans that have been here for a long time to, hey, this is your team, Robert Thomas. And some of that body language that's out there right now, it can't happen anymore because now it's on you. You're the one that everybody is going to be looking to. Thomas wanted to be captain last time around. That's no secret. Everybody knows that. He's spoken about it publicly. Well, now maybe it is your turn. Or, hey, Jake Neighbors, you're the guy, man. Go take this team in the direction that you want it to go in. So I don't think this is something that will happen at the deadline. It's really hard to move contracts with multiple seasons remaining, especially this size of a contract at the trade deadline. But if there's any team that would do it, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs because they're desperate to go out there and win.
Yeah.
And they really need this specific type of player, this culture piece as a part of their team. And they're all in because they don't know what's going to happen with Mitch Marner after this season.
Yeah. And to put this into perspective of why they would go trade for Brayden Schenn, they're also talking about Ryan O'Reilly. And Ryan O'Reilly is making $4.5 million for, I believe, the next 3 years with the Nashville Predators. So you'd be talking probably, if you're going to eat salary on that, same contract that the Toronto Maple Leafs are looking. Basically, their goal is to find some way to push John Tavares down. I don't know if that's Brayden Schenn, in my opinion, but
he's been playing like a true second-line center
absolutely.
This year, though.
And playoff-wise, I mean, that guy's going to give you every single thing that you need, and if you're Craig Berube, that's what you want. So that's why this conversation is sparked right now in Toronto, because they need a third-line center. This is why I do find this trade deadline very appealing, because if a team's in need of a center, if a team's in need of a right-shot defenseman, I do think teams are going to look at the Blues and say, hey, could you eat some salary? And guess what? The Blues got a lot of cap space for the rest of this season and moving forward.
Somebody from the text line, says, guys, please never let BK be in charge of an NHL roster. Don't worry, that's never going to happen.
He'll be in charge of a baseball.
Has no idea about trade values. A third-round pick after eating $2 million for Schenn, that's crazy. Also, Marner and Rantanen would never come here. Possible. Marner and Rantanen are pipe dreams, no doubt. I don't know what the value would be for Brayden Schenn on the market because he has a full no-trade clause, which plays into this. We know that limits what you're going to get in return because he gets to choose where he goes if he's going to go anywhere. And if you eat a couple of $1 million on the salary, it might be one of those things kind of similar to the Arenado deal with the Cardinals where that's what you have to do in order to make the deal even possible. So it's not leverage. You're not leveraging anything. You're just making the deal possible for you. And you're removing $4.5 million from your books, not just for this year, but for the next 3 seasons beyond that. And that's really where the value comes in for the Blues. I don't know what that deal would be. Maybe it's a second-round pick. Maybe it's a prospect. Maybe Nick Robertson is the kind of guy that they would get in return for that. I legitimately have no clue what the value would be in that kind of a deal, but I don't think you're getting a ton in return.
No.
I think it truly would be kind of a salary dump.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just like, you're trying to come up with like contract comparisons, and it's just those guys don't get traded. And that's why I don't know if it's good for the long term of the Blues trading away a Brayden Schenn. I think the long term is finding what the problem is beyond that. And to me, it's your top players. That's where I would be starting if I'm looking at this, not Brayden Schenn. But if a team calls, I'm in a position if I'm Doug Armstrong where I could potentially be drafting top 5. I'm going backwards instead of forwards, so I need to change something.
It also could be a situation where, yeah, we trade Schenn. Hopefully in the offseason, move Falk, move one of Letty or Suter as well. It's a lot of money that's on your books now. Mm-hmm. And you have kind of overhauled this thing to get really young really quick. Schenn is one of the last few remaining players from that 2019 team that was also a veteran on that team. Most of the other guys that are still here were very young when they were playing on that 2019 team. So they have now aged into their mid to late 20s. Schenn's aging into his mid-30s. That is not the kind of deal that you would typically want on your books. That is a very much win now type of a player. So I don't know if this is something that that the Blues will do. I think it is something kind of like the Barbie situation where you don't have to love it. It's not something that I'm like excited about. I think if you're just looking at the health of the organization and there's another team that's calling that he's willing to go to, might be something they should do.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a pleasant conversation to have. All right, in 15 minutes, we're going to talk to Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues. But next, I was thinking about Andre Pallante earlier today, Alex.
Weird.
Yep. And the reason why is because Katie Wu had a piece out breaking down basically every Cardinals pitcher that is going to be at spring training this year.
Oh, baby.
And in the Andre Pallante write-up, or excuse me, it was actually in the Eric Fetty write-up, she said he's going to slot into the rotation right in the middle between Andre Pallante and Miles Mikolas. In other words, Andre Pallante in that scenario would be considered your number 2 starter. Is that realistic for him? And if so, who's the Cardinal previously that would be a good comparison for what we can expect for Pallante in 2025? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. Whether you have erectile dysfunction issues that you're trying to work through, low testosterone, you want to lose some of that weight that you gained maybe over the holiday season, or you want to learn more about their vitamin infusions, their red light therapy programs for you, they've got all of that over at Victory Men's Health. The process is super easy. Go to their website today. Write this down somewhere. VictoryMen'sHealth.com. That's VictoryMen'sHealth.com. In the top right corner of the page, you'll see a spot that says request your first appointment. Book now. Name, email, phone number. Tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and tell them how they can unlock your inner champion today. It's a super easy process. They've done this for me. They can do it for you as well. Again, they can help you out. Erectile dysfunction issues, low testosterone, weight loss goals that you're trying to meet. It's all available for you to unlock your inner champion at Victory Men's Health. 4 great locations across the St. Louis Metro and online today at VictoryMen'sHealth.com. All right, so Andre Pallante is a good pitcher. We all agree with that, right? But when I read earlier today over on Katie Woo's piece from The Athletic that Eric Fetty would likely slide into the rotation right in the middle between Andre Pallante and Miles Michaelis, I did a little bit of a spit take because that's not where I had Andre Pallante at in my rotation. Now, it's semantics. It's a number 2 starter versus like a number 3 or 4, whatever. But
that ish matters.
Those are important.
The reason why I slot guys is because it allows you to kind of think about, okay, who would they go up against in a playoff series, right? The Cardinals aren't going to play a playoff series this year, but
they could get there.
Just walk with me, all right?
If we expand the postseason more, we can be there.
Hold on, I'm supposed to walk with you of them potentially starting in the playoffs, but we're not starting in a playoff game.
So Andre Pallante last year had a 3.8 ERA. The year before, he was exclusively used as a reliever. He had a 4.8 ERA. The year before that, when he was used as a starter at times, a 3.1 ERA.
That's pretty good.
Andre Pallante is better as a starter than as a reliever, in my opinion. I think that's what he should be utilized as. He also doesn't get strikeouts. And that's part of the thing I would imagine for T-Bone that has you a little concerned about, hey, is all of this sustainable? Like, is he a guy that over the long haul is going to be able to be a sub-4 ERA guy, a positive on the ERA plus, like above league average? And so I thought about it this way. Do you guys like Jaime Garcia early in his career here in St. Louis? Obviously, the injuries, the other stuff was
all
one
the
thing,
way up until Jaime got sick in the playoffs and couldn't start. I loved Jaime Garcia.
Performance-wise, we all liked Jaime Garcia, right?
Yeah.
The reason why I bring him up is because he's the guy that immediately came to mind for me as being not really a strikeout artist, but finds a way to control contact in a way that he is well above league average as a pitcher. And if he had to start a game 2 for you, you'd probably feel pretty good about it. Again, if you trusted him with the other stuff that you're talking about there, Alex. Do you guys think that Andre Pallante has Jaime Garcia's upside? Because Jaime Garcia in his career here in St. Louis, 8 years, 3.6 ERA, 150 starts. That's a hell of a starter. If you told me I could press the button right now to sign up for that from Andre Pallante over the next 5 years, I can't tell you how quickly I would hit that button. But do you think he has that in him?
I don't. And I think it's because baseball's changed a little bit. Like, I think because he's not a strikeout guy, you're potentially falling into a little bit of Miles Michaelis territory. Now, I think he does have at least some swing and miss stuff. It's just not to the level that you believe a number 2 starter. And why was Jaime Garcia so effective and so dangerous? Well, one, he was a lefty, which I think is always beneficial for you.
But to be fair, Andre Pallante is basically a lefty. He doesn't actually throw with his left hand, but he might as well.
Well, but it's deceptive
Hey, he worked
when you're
on
a
that,
hitter.
okay?
But if you don't have the swing and miss stuff, and if you're Andre Pallante, I'd be very concerned that that style, or what baseball has turned into in terms of the banning of the shift, and you can't have that defense behind you like you typically do, I'd be a little concerned that you can't get to that level. I think he's a perfect number 3 starter for you in a rotation. But no, I don't see Jaime Garcia upside.
I think he has potential for the Jaime Garcia upside, but I think that's a modern day 3. I don't think, like you mentioned, like, would you be happy if Jaime were your 2? Like, when you think back to what he was then, baseball has changed. Jaime's a 3 now. Jaime Garcia would have been a number 3 that you would not have wanted to go up against a Aaron Nola in a game 2, or name the Braves second best starter, or, you know, all these playoff teams. So can he get there? I think he can. One thing that does worry me is walks a little bit. I mean, his walk rate, 3.6 per 9 last year. Now, that part of that was inflated from early on in the season, but that is a little bit of a concern, especially if you're not going to be striking out guys. Snell can get away with that kind of stuff because he also doesn't let the ball get put in play. I think he can be a perfect 3. And I think he is in that position, once again, where the Cardinals are falling a little victim to where the Blues are, which is, hey, he has to be a 2 because you don't have a 2. He should not be a 2. Like, moving forward as they build this thing out, there's no scenario where Andre Pallante should be the guy that gets the ball game 2 of a playoff series for the Cardinals.
I agree.
He should be a 3, but I think he can get to Jaime Garcia. I think he can do a good enough job of limiting damage. I think he fixed the right-handed batter issue last year as the season went along, especially as he added that, I think it was the sinker that runs in on them. Yep. As long as he has that pitch, I think he can be a number 3. So I expect he could get to Jaime's potential.
Some guys that fit into the criteria that we're talking about with Andre Pallante, not low strikeouts, really good ERAs, quality pitchers, kind of 2 3s, depending on your perspective on them. The first one that comes to mind is Kyle Hendricks, who did it at an extremely high level and was Cy Young, of course, against the Cardinals specifically, but he was consistently in the mid 3s ERAs, and he never really had a Ks per 9 over 8. He was always in the 7s, which is where Andre Pallante's been. Marcus Stroman is one of these guys as well, just really good at controlling the quality of the contact that goes against him for his career. Jose Quintana is another one. He's a little bit better on the strikeouts than what we've seen from Andre Pallante. But that's kind of the range of pitcher that you're talking about here. And even if he doesn't end up as a legit number 2, dude, if this is where he's at, that's a win for the Cardinals in terms of their development from their farm system. If you've got him slotting in as a 3-4, and maybe Quinn Matthews becomes the guy with that strikeout stuff, he's a 2, suddenly you're cooking with gas a little bit here. So yeah. I do think Andre Pallante has the potential to be the type of thing that the Cardinals have been missing for the last 5 to 7 years, and it allows you to avoid going out and signing the player that has to be in the middle of your rotation for $12 to $15 million a year.
Kyle Gibson.
And exactly, that's where I was going, and that's why it would be such a big win. Is we had that conversation, whatever it was, an hour ago, about doing the Cubs model, and hey, the money's coming off the books. Go out and sign one of the guys in that top echelon of free agents. Go get the Dylan Cease to help lead the next wave of this rotation when Sonny Gray's money comes off of the books. Well, the reason you're able to do that is because you don't have to chase your tail like the Cardinals have been doing. You don't have to go out there and say, all right, we got to give $20 to $30 million for a 3, 4, and 5 to help our rotation out. No, if you've got somebody that's internally developed, they slowly go through that arbitration process. By the time they do get to that $10 million, they're like in year 5 of potentially being in your rotation. So that's where it's such a major win. If Pallante never gets beyond being a number 3, I don't even care about that. It's more about having a cost-controlled number 3 that's within the system.
apparently Buster Only has tweeted something.
Yeah,
Buster, what's he up to?
I read this a little bit ago. He essentially said, like, apparently Arenado's mindset is highly, highly motivated, and the Boston Red Sox are continuing to look for other options. So he said what we've talked about and what JP Morosi reported on yesterday.
Nolan Arenado vetoed the potential deal to the Astros, what some of his friends say is important. They think he would really like the idea of going to the Red Sox if Boston and the Cardinals could work out the terms. Arenado's current mindset is, quote, highly, highly motivated. Okay. The thing that is, like, I suppose newsy there, he likes the idea of going to the Red Sox. That's what matters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We knew that from John Denton's reporting, where he said that, hey, the Red Sox would be high on the list of teams that Nolan Arenado would like to play for. So not really anything new there necessarily, but it continues to reiterate the fact that, because we know things could change for Nolan Arenado. He apparently didn't want to go to the Astros suddenly. If the Cardinals and Boston work out the terms, my guess is he'll be a Red Sox. I don't think he's going to nix this deal. No. I think he's now ready to go somewhere else, and Boston is seemingly the one spot that can potentially land him. So that's your update from Buster Only, which is kind of an update. Coming up next, we're talking to Chris Kerber, get his update on the St. Louis Blues here on BK and Ferrario.
Hey, Chris Kerber with you here. And look, if that furnace goes out because it is still winter, yes, I know we had 70-degree heat 2 days ago, and then it's cold again today and rainy. If that HVAC unit of yours goes out, you have an option to get emergency service done right here in St. Louis, and that's through Classic Air Care. They provide emergency HVAC service. They have same-day service available to help repair your broken HVAC system. Here's a couple signs you need emergency repairs. A CO detector alarm goes off, frequent circuit breaker tripping, the HVAC won't start. Maybe pilot light color. Think about this. Older gas HVAC systems and furnaces, they've got a visible pilot light. If the flame isn't blue, you need emergency HVAC or furnace service. Classic Air Care provides it for you. They take the stress, they take the worry. They know how important it is to make your house comfortable, but also to make it safe. So if you haven't had that unit serviced and maintained in a while, make sure you do it. But if something goes wrong, keep them in mind. It's Classic Air Care. They've been making people comfortable since 1926, and you can set an appointment online or get all the information you need at classicaircare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here. The Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues fell to the Oilers last night. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Florida Panthers. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 7 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. And Kerbs will join us next here on BK and Ferrario. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent air sander heating and air conditioning dealer.
Along with Alex and T-Bone on BK, happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline. That is presented by Callier and Thompson. To be joined by the voice of the Blues is Chris Kerber, joining us as he does each and every Wednesday here on BK and Ferrario. He was on the call last night for the Blues as they get a point, send it to overtime against the Edmonton Oilers. Unfortunately, they do lose at 3-on-3 because Connor McDavid was on the ice, and sometimes that just happens. Kerbs, we appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
BK, doing well. How are you?
Doing very well. What was your biggest takeaway from that one last night, Kerbs?
Well, I kind of started our post-game breakdown with the way you just ended that last sentence. To me, it was about as easy a post-game breakdown as you could get to. You know, the Edmonton Oilers won that game because they had Connor McDavid, and the Blues did not.
It turns out that's helpful.
That's my biggest take. Well, listen, sometimes it really is that simple.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we can look at a couple things. You can look at some D-zone coverage. Yes, you're going to look at how a team pulls back, right, to get into the defensive zone, and you work on coverage. And those are coachable moments that Jim Montgomery is going to continue to work on with this group. But having said that, the bottom line was they had a superstar in Connor McDavid that was making plays last night, and they are better than the St. Louis Blues are because of it. And it's actually okay. Like, I mean, I know you're frustrated that you lose a game, but listen, it's actually, I mean, it's okay. That's where the Blues are as a franchise right now. And it's where the Edmonton Oilers are. But, man, Connor McDavid was good again.
He really was. 5-on-5 wise, though, Curves, like they did find a way to keep Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl off the board. The difference, though, the first period at 5-on-5, Edmonton was having their way with the Blues. Second period, they started to kind of push back. What was the difference between those two periods, in your opinion?
Well, I think throughout the whole game, the Blues did a really good job on the faceoff dot. I thought they bent, but they didn't break. A lot of that first period, those chances were coming from the outside for the most part, and the Blues have proven under Jim Montgomery to be pretty good in that front. And in that way, I think the biggest difference is the Blues found a way to get a little more offensive zone time as the game went on. They were holding on to the pucks more. You know, it wasn't just dump in. Sometimes when the other team gets momentum, you're going to have to play defense in your own end for a while. And when you get the puck out, you dump it in so you can get a line change. Well, what happens when you dump it in to do that? You're giving possession back to the other team, and they're going to come at you. You've got to get it to where you can start stemming the tide, and they're the ones dumping it in. And that's kind of how a cycle and momentum change over the course of a game. We saw that much better in the second and third period last night. I thought, all in all, 5-on-5. Look, I know the coaches aren't going to be overly happy with the first or second periods, but you did, especially because of Jordan Binnington, you did get through, those first two periods and really the whole game with I think, a very good result, 5-on-5 against Edmonton.
So, Curbs, one thing that I was thinking about last night after the game, and now McDavid and Draisaitl are a different breed entirely. Like, you could almost throw them into a separate category of their own, like, superstar status, right? They're unbelievable. But it's something I've been thinking about a lot this season as we've been watching the Blues, which is, man, I look at these teams at the top of the standings right now, and almost all of them have some kind of a superstar. And even the ones that don't, they are elite at something, whether that's goaltending with the Winnipeg Jets or goal suppression with the Dallas Stars. Like, they've all got something that they do at just this exceptionally high level. And right now, as I look at the Blues, and I know they're in the middle of the retool, so I'm not saying, like, this has to happen now, but even as I project forward, I just don't know what that thing is going to be for them. How do they develop that, Curbs? Like, is that a personnel thing to you? Is that a coaching thing? Is it just I have to be patient, wait for Dvorsky and Snuggerud to get here? What do you think that thing could be for them that they are eventually going to be elite at?
Well, this answer may sound a little bit as a cop-out, BK, but first off, I agree with everything you're saying, and I agree with everything you're asking. I think the answer is a little bit of all of it.
Sure.
I think the Blues answered. Let's peel the blooming onion back here a little bit with each of those little parts. Coaching. Okay, the Blues answered the coaching question with bringing in Jim Montgomery. You know you have a good coach, right? Look at what the Detroit Red Wings are doing now that they've got Todd McClellan there, running things. Okay, so you know you have a good coach, right? That's the first start. The second part of it is you're right. When you don't have a superstar, you have to be a really good sum of all your parts. That's what we learned in the 18-19 season, right? That's the Winnipeg Jets, to your example. They've got a really good goaltender. The Blues had Bennington. And then it's the sum of their parts. Scheifele's really good, and Kyle Connor is excellent, but, we're not putting them in superstar status, right? So, you had your Ryan O'Reillys and your studs in that sense, okay? So that having said that, if you're an organization and you're not drafting high enough and you're not finding your way into that first or second or third overall pick to get a superstar potentially, you've got to become the sum of your parts. And how do you do that? This is the patience part you were just talking about. It's taking time. You've got to wait for a Dvorsky to be drafted 10th overall and get here. You've got to wait for Jimmy Snuggerud to turn pro. He didn't turn pro after 2 years, maybe like a couple of his Minnesota teammates did. Okay, you've got to wait for them to get there. You're going to continue to build. You're going to sign Dylan Carlson and find out that you've got a really good player with some real upside. The same thing with Broberg. You're going to put them with a veteran player like a Colton Parayko and a Cam Fowler. And so what the Blues are doing is right now they are in the process of collecting the sum of their parts. It just takes a while to get there. In the meantime, you don't have that superstar to be that, to carry you through that process. So I think more patience is really just part of the story.
With that being said, Curbs, you look at the top line, Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. Since Jim Montgomery has taken over, they've had 5 different players play on that line combination, with a couple of games them breaking up Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. It looks like tomorrow could be potentially the 6th different player, as they had Dylan Holloway skating with those two. What does that tell you? What's your takeaway when you hear 5 different guys have been playing with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich this year?
Look, in the end, it comes down to those two guys in Thomas and Buchnevich just finding a way to make whoever's with them better. I don't get it fully. I don't know. I mean, look, Jim Montgomery liked having Jake Neighbors as an opportunity up there because he knew what Jake Neighbors was going to bring and really relished the moment to check against Connor McDavid and those guys. There's that aspect of it. Dylan Holloway has played consistently enough and works well enough to earn that opportunity. It just tells me, again, and I'm not trying to avoid a deeper answer, guys, but I just don't know if there's any more true answer than you just don't have enough top-end depth to manage through a top 6 right now. So if you take a Dylan Holloway from the Schenn line, you've got to put somebody there, and then who are you cycling through? The same guys you've been cycling through on the Thomas line. And so it's not – look, you have to try. You have to break things down. As players, you have to find schemes to work. Your goal is to win. Your goal is to get better. I get it, right? But I think we've seen all season long the St. Louis Blues just haven't had enough top 6 depth or top 6 ready depth on a consistent basis to rely on, and that leads to the kind of changes you're seeing.
Curbs, final question.
I don't know. Does that answer the question? Or I don't know if that – I don't know if I'm – like I'm not trying to like scapegoat the two questions you guys just asked. It's just sometimes, I mean, this is the old Denny Green, isn't it? You kind of are what your record says you are right
and
now.
that's kind of why I feel like we are where we're at, Curbs. It's so difficult to break this team down in terms of this year because it's kind of a holding pattern
Can
right
I even
now.
add to that? Curbs, I didn't expect this team to make the playoffs. I came into the season and I was like, yeah, I think they'll probably be basically what they are right now. And then we heard from the front office, no, this is a playoff team. And they kept pushing. And like, when we hear from the team that is the stated goals, well, then I need to judge them accordingly, right? So we break these games down. We talk about them as, can they make the playoffs? And when that is the stated goal, it changes kind of everything about what we're talking about. And I don't know if it was ever fair. Like, I think now as we're watching them, it feels to me as though maybe the internal expectations were just a little too fast to get to that place. So that's kind of where I am right now, but I don't know. I think that's why I'm a little confused on how to assess the team right now.
Well, okay, I think I'm right there with you again on that, BK. Like I agree with you on that. Now, but here's the thing. You think you put a team together that's capable of making the playoffs, and they're only 6 points out. So are they still? Yes, there's still 27 games to go in the regular season. All right, tough competition, but okay, mathematically and sure. I guess legitimately, you still have a chance. The reality sits, and the reality of it is though, is for that to have happened, you had to have a lot more consistency, from the start. Okay, and that didn't happen. So that puts you really behind the eight ball. Is you weren't building on that same foundation. You weren't consistent enough with Robert Thomas. Pavel Buchnevich is not having as strong a year offensively as you would like him to have, right? You've had inconsistencies and in and out of the lineup for Matthew Joseph, for Zachary Bolduc, right? The topics we just talked about who fills the top six. And while I think you've got to be very happy with your season from Jordan Kyrou, I think you got to be very happy with your season from Dylan Holloway. You've just had situations where, Scott Perunovich in and out of the lineup now traded. Brandon Saad eventually having to be put on waivers. That was too many ifs to not go right to find yourself in a successful spot. Is there still time to make some hay? Sure. But when you look at the season as a whole so far, I think you have to you break it down very honestly that way, where sometimes expectations and what you think you have don't quite work out when actually put into practice.
No doubt. Hey, Curbs, we appreciate the time as always, my man. We look forward to talking with you again next week. We'll talk with you soon.
All right, guys. Have an awesome rest of the week.
See you, Curbs. It's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, joining us as he does each and every Wednesday here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, to his point on getting off to too bad of a start, the Blues have a .531 win percentage under Jim Montgomery, which is pretty good. It's not great. It's 20th in the league, so it's not the ideal, but they've been pretty good under him. They just got off to such a bad start that it's really hard to pull yourself out of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do have to factor in, like, it has been 3 different training camps of different coaches now, or 2 different training camps of different coaches, 3 coaches in 2 seasons, so that could be part of it. But, I keep going back to Detroit. We were talking about this before, and Curbs just brought it up. People say, well, look at what Detroit's doing. Detroit's finding a way to win. You know how many top 10 picks they have playing on that team right now? They have 11 top 10 picks. 10 of those are their own. At some point, this was going to happen. And I do think you are in a little bit of a holding pattern right now with the Blues. And maybe, like you said, BK, I was a little bit higher up on the team when they started the year, but it was because of the Broberg and Holloway additions. Prior to that, I didn't think that team was making the playoffs. They made those moves, and I'm like, okay, well, these guys could be really good pieces for you. But the moves that the Blues made said, nope, we're a playoff team. So I'm going to judge you accordingly. And you've underperformed. Now, what are the factors of why you've underperformed? To me, that doesn't come down to the GM. That doesn't come down to the coach. That comes down to the players.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to their points percentage since Monty had taken over, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, Edmonton, Vegas, LA. Those are the 6 teams with a better points percentage in the Western Conference than you since Monty took over. They're 7th, which is where they wanted to be. They just got off to too bad of a start for that to really matter the way that they hoped that it would. All right, coming up next, we're going to finish things up with the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings, as Super Bowl 59 is this weekend, and that means it's your last chance to play NFL Pick 6 this season. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, and DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers, play $5, get $59 in Pick 6 credits. I'm looking at Travis Kelce, more than 61.5 receiving yards, A.J. Brown, more than 70.5 receiving yards, and Jalen Hurts, more than 211.5 passing yards. 10 on that can win you 40+. And Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my code 101WXOS. That's code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5 and get $59 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18+. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus award is non-trouble Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Hey, join me at 101 ESPN this Saturday at the St. Louis Wheel at Union Station, which will be transformed into Captain America Shield. I know T-Bone is excited about this one. Saturday from 5 to 7 o'clock, the first 50 fans will receive complimentary Ferris wheel rides, Fandango movie passes, and chances to win prizes, photo ops, and so much more. It's all courtesy of the new film, Captain America Brave New World. That's Saturday from 5 to 7 o'clock with me. Hey, that's me. Out of Union Station, Marvel Studios' Captain America Brave New World arrives in theaters on February the 14th. That is also known as Valentine's Day. Full details at 101ESPN.com.
Go take a picture with BK and then tweet out, I would have much rather seen Alex Ferrario.
That's fair. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is super easy to use. It is also free to download, so check it out. It is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. Blues off tonight. Mizzou basketball in action tonight. T-Bone, you got the Tigers?
I got the Vols.
Okay, well, Tennessee's probably going to win.
Tigers!
But Alex has the Tigers in that. We will break it down tomorrow here on the show. Plenty more Blues as well. We'll continue previewing the Super Bowl. The Fast Lane, I'm sure, has some of that for you. They are coming up at 2 o'clock. They'll take you up until 6 here on 101 ESPN.